Welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, this is Movie Readings, where I take entire Hollywood scripts and read them from start to finish right here on YouTube. Each of these takes hours to make, so it could really help me out if you would consider subscribing and leave a comment down below with the next movie reading you would like to hear. Enjoy Die Hard. We fade in on the 405 freeway. Los Angeles, early evening. Christmas tinsel on the light poles. We are looking east past Inglewood into the orange grid of LA at night, when suddenly we tilt up to catch a huge belly of a landing 747. The noise is deafening. The usual moment just after landing, when you let out that sigh of relief that you've made it in one piece. John McClane, mid-30s, good-looking, athletic, and tired from his trip. He sits by the window. His relief on landing is subtle, but we notice. Suddenly, he hears a voice next to him. "Don't fly much, do you?" McClane looks over at a grinning middle-aged businessman sitting next to him. "No." "Want to know the secret of surviving air travel? Take off your shoes and socks when you get where you're going, and walk around 10 minutes barefoot. Better than a shower and a cup of coffee." Warily. "Thanks. I'll remember that." "You think I'm crazy, don't you? Trust me, I've been a salesman for 20 years. I know what I'm talking about." The businessman oozes confidence. McClane reaches up to help a woman down with her bags, and the butt of his Beretta handgun suddenly becomes visible to the businessman. The man blanches at the sight, and McClane notices his look. He's seen it before. "It's okay, I'm a cop." We see this doesn't totally calm the businessman. McClane holds his look and produces a gold NYPD detective shield. McClane firm and definite. "Trust me, I've been doing it for 13 years. We cut to close on a bottle of Dom Perignon as the cork explodes across a large office floor decorated for Christmas. A Japanese man, mid-50s, standing on a desk, holds up the bottle triumphantly and looks out at an adoring audience of junior executives and office personnel. He is Joseph Tagaki, Senior VP of Sales of Nakatomi, a multinational corporation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate each and every one of you for making this one of the greatest days in history of Nakatomi Corporation." In the background, obviously still at work, an attractive businesswoman in her mid-30s, studying a computer printout, heads toward her office. Falling into step with her is Harry Ellis, 37, VP of Sales, well-dressed with stylish, slicked-back hair. He looks and acts very smooth. "What about dinner?" "Do you ever look at the calendar, Harry? Christmas Eve, Santa's arriving, family, those things ring a bell?" She turns into her office. Her name is Holly Gennaro McClane, though the nameplate on her door stops after the first two. She puts the printout down on her secretary's desk. "Go on out, Ginny. They're opening up the champagne." Ginny, grateful to be released. "Thanks, Miss Gennaro." Ginny passes Ellis in the doorway as Holly punches a number on the phone. Ellis not giving up. "How about tomorrow night?" "Worse." Just then, the party on Holly's phone picks up, and we intercut. A 4-year-old girl, Lucy McClane, answers the phone with a sense of importance. "Hello, this is Lucy McClane." Holly suddenly smiles. It's the first time we've seen her smile, but it speaks volumes about the person hidden under a tough business exterior. With affection. "Hello, Lucy McClane. This is your mother." She looks up and watches Ellis leave. "Mommy, when are you coming home?" "Soon. You'll be in bed when I get there, though." "Will you come say good night?" "Don't I always, you goose?" She enjoys her daughter's giggle over the line. "May I speak with Paulina, please?" Lucy hands the phone to a young Salvadorian woman, Paulina, the housekeeper. "Hello, Mrs. Holly. You come home soon?" "Hopefully." Mr. McClane didn't call, did he? No, ma'am. Holly hides a trace of disappointment. Maybe that means he got a flight. Why don't you make up the bed in the spare room just in case? Yes, ma'am, I already did. Holly's smile comes through again. McClane, wearing his wool topcoat and carrying a huge FAO Schwartz stuffed animal and his hang-up bag, comes down the American Airlines ramp with the businessman from the plane. Remember, bare feet 10 minutes. Merry Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas. The businessman moves down the ramp and is lovingly greeted by his family. McClane watches, moved by the sight, then looks around the waiting area, just on the chance his family might be waiting. Instead, he spots a thin, gangling black kid, William, an ill-fitting chauffeur's uniform. As he waits, he beats out a rhythm on a card with J. McClane printed on it. McClane pauses in front of him. I'm John McClane. William, sir, I'm your limo driver. Nice bag. He turns and starts walking. Don't you take this? Do I? Hell, I don't know. I've never been picked up in a limo before. William takes McClane's bag. Hey, that's good, 'cause I've never driven one before. McClane and William both sit in the front seat as the black limo turns off the Santa Monica freeway and heads north towards Century City. The huge toy animal sits in the back seat. McClane hears a rustling at his feet and looks down to see a bunch of fast food wrappers. He picks one up. It says Taco Bell. And he looks at William, who grins sheepishly. What can I say, man? I didn't expect you to sit up front. Popping in a cassette. Mind if I play some tunes? A hard rap song blasts from the speakers. How about some Christmas music? That is Christmas music. McClane gives up and grins, tosses the wrapper back on the floor, and looks out the window. From his POV, we see convertibles with Christmas trees in their back seats, time temperature signs which read 69 degrees, and palm trees trimmed in Christmas lights. It is clear that Christmas LA style is a foreign commodity he could live happily without. To the animal in the back. You know, you're stocked back there. We got CD, CB, TV, phone, full bar. I even know a couple of teddy bears. To McClane. Or is he married? Married. She live out here? As of 6 months ago. And you live in New York? You're nosy, you know that, William? Hey, I'm sorry. I gotta quit doing that, you know? That's okay. So you divorced or what? McClane gives up. She had a good job. It turned into a good career. But meant her moving here. You're fast. So why didn't you come? 'Cause I'm a New York cop and not an IBM salesman. I don't just get up and move. William goes right to the point. And you didn't think she'd make it here? A miniature Christmas tree with blinking lights sits on the desk of Sergeant Al Powell, 30s, a man who's had enough experience to know how bad it can be out there. He speaks in low tones to the telephone. Yeah, honey, don't go crazy. I know you're pregnant. I know you get cravings. I didn't say I wouldn't buy 'em. I just said I wish you'd buy 'em in big boxes. Suddenly, Powell's miniature tree is knocked on its side, and a handgun goes spinning across the desk into his lap. He looks up to see 2 cops trying to subdue a struggling suspect in front of his desk. Cop number 1 looks up at Powell and grins. Don't worry, Al. It ain't loaded. To the phone. I gotta go. Powell hangs up and puts the heavy firearm on the desk as the 2 cops shove the suspect into a chair in front of him. Cop number 2 stares at the suspect and points at Powell. Sergeant Powell is a very deadly man with a handgun, so don't try anything or he might kill you by accident. The 2 cops laugh. Powell ignores them and expertly rolls in a sheet of paper to his main weapon, the typewriter. To the suspect. Full name, last name first. McClane and William pull up in front of the Nakatomi building, a 40-story, ultra-modern high-rise in Century City. You here to patch things up?" "I'm here to try. Thanks for the ride, William." He gets out, and William sits a moment in the car, alone, before getting out to help him with the bags. William climbs out of the limo and stops by the trunk. "What happens if you don't get back with your wife? Where are you going to stay?" "I'll find someplace." He looks up at the high-rise lit by huge spotlights, then back at William, who's made no attempt to open the trunk. "Look, I'm going to pull into the parking garage and wait. You score with your wife, give me a call on the car phone, and I'll leave your bags inside of the desk. You strike out, I'll get you to a hotel." He hands McClane a slip with a number on it. He takes the number. "Thanks. What are you going to do?" "Don't worry about William." He points to the stuffed animal. "He's going to hang out with his friend till you call." The Nakatomi lobby is beautiful and deserted. A large Christmas tree stands next to the security table where the guard sits. McClane goes to the desk and signs in. "Holly Gennaro, International Sales?" 32nd floor, you can't miss 'em. They're the only ones left in the place." McClane riding the elevator. He rotates his head, getting the cricks out. As he approaches the 32nd floor, we hear a tremendous thumping, throbbing noise. McClane stops and listens before he realizes it's the party. The door opens, and the noise attacks us. McClane moves around the edge of the party and stops a dancing woman, who points to Holly's office. McClane pauses at the door and notes the name, then knocks. It is opened by Takagi. Ellis sits behind Holly's secretary desk and nervously taps a tightly rolled dollar bill. "Sorry, I was looking for—" "Holly Gennaro?" "Yes. Then you must be John McClane." Introducing himself. "Joe Tagaki, John. How was your ride in?" Ellis subtly runs a checking finger under his nose, then stands to shake hands with McClane. McClane takes it all in. "Nice. Do I have you to thank for that?" "Or blame for it. She was going to meet you herself, but I threw some things at her in the last minutes." He motions to Ellis. "John, this is Harry Ellis, one of our shining stars in international sales." "John is a New York policeman." Ellis shaking hands. "Pleasure to meet you. I've heard a lot about you from your your wife." We can tell by McClane's look that he doesn't think much of Ellis. McClane holds Ellis's look and runs his finger subtly under his nose. Low to Ellis. "You missed some." Back to Takagi. "Well, you fellows throw quite a Christmas party." Ellis automatically puts his hand to his face before realizing his face is clean. "Well, actually, it's also a little celebration for a deal we closed this afternoon. $150 million deal. A deal we have Holly to thank a lot for." Holly enters. Seeing McClane, momentarily stops her. "John, did you meet everyone?" "No, we've been sticking spears in him. Of course he has." McClane and Holly look at each other for a moment awkwardly. Then she kisses him on the cheek. The awkwardness pleases Ellis. "She is made for this business. Tough as nails." "Show him the watch." He points to a new gold Rolex on Holly's wrist. Holly giving him a look. "I will later." Show him. Don't be embarrassed." A little something to show how much we appreciate her good work." Holly fixes Ellis with a lethal look. "I'm sure I'll see it later. Right now, I could use a place to wash up." A UPS truck turns off Olympic into the underground parking garage of Nakatomi. It goes down the ramp and passes William's black limo. William is not visible in the front. The black windows are tinted. William sits in the back seat. He's making a drink from the bar with the TV on and his rap music blasting from the cassette player, oblivious to the truck passing behind him. The UPS truck stops in front of the service elevator on the next level down. As the truck idles, the uniformed driver makes a note on his clipboard. Holly sits in Ellis's office, a sharper image kind of place. Through a door to the private washroom, she watches McClane in his t-shirt finish washing his face. Sorry about Ellis. He has a hard time this time of year. Hey, I know the type. He thought he was God's greatest gift. They both smile, a reminder of something past. So, where are you staying? This all happened so fast, I didn't ask you on the phone. McClane finishes drying his face and steps to the doorway. Well, Cappy Roberts retired out here a couple years ago. He said I could bunk with him. Oh, where does he live? Pomona? Pomona, you'll be in the car the whole time. Look, let's make this easy. I have a spare bedroom. It's not huge, but the kids would love to have you at the house. McClane fixes her with a look. How about you? I would too. I feel kind of stupid asking how things are going. It seems pretty obvious. He nods at her new watch. She rubs her watch band self-consciously. When she looks up, McClane is staring at her. God, you look good. She's pleased and smiles. You don't look half bad yourself. They lock eyes for a moment, but it's an intense moment that says a lot about how they still feel about each other. Just then, a man and a woman, both a little tipsy, open the door to the office, see that it's occupied, and beat a hasty retreat. The interruption temporarily dents the mood. Holly tries to smile. Welcome to L.A. I've missed you. She leaves, and McClane smiles to himself. It's a start. He looks at all the lavishness around him and picks up a phone on the wall by the toilet. He opens his wallet and takes out the phone number William gave him. A photo of his children stops him. Holly and the 2 children we saw at Holly's house. He flips it over. On the back, in crude but painstaking handwriting of a 5-year-old, it says, We miss you, Daddy. Love, John, and in even more primitive letters, Lucy. McClane returns the photo to his wallet, dials the number, and begins to unlace his shoes. The guard at the front desk notices the UPS truck on his monitor. He continues to watch the truck, and only half notices as a BMW pulls up in front of the building. 2 extremely well-dressed businessmen, late 20s, climb out and start up the stairs for the door. As they cross the lobby to the guard's table to sign in, we hear their conversation. So, Kareem rebounds. Listen, this is a great play. He feeds Worthy on the break over to AC, to Magic, back to Worthy in the lanes, and suddenly the other man pulls out a Walther pistol with a silencer and aims it at the guard's head. Before the guard can react, he pulls the trigger. Boom! 2 points. The speed with which the murder takes place sets the tone for the rest of the action. The killer moves behind the desk, stepping over a small pool of blood from the guard. His name is Carl, big with long blonde hair like a rock drummer. Carl takes off the silencer and looks at the video monitor of the UPS truck. The first man, Tio, opens his briefcase and takes out a portable CB radio. We're in. On the TV monitor, the driver nods at the security camera as several men climb out of the rear of the van and begin unloading wooden crates by the service elevator. Tio enters the small control room and comfortably sits behind a maintenance keyboard. With a few type-in commands, he locks down the passenger elevators up to the 32nd floor. Then, with several more computer commands, systematically causes the heavy steel gates to the parking garage close. The escalators to the garage come to a stop. Tio finishes typing and disconnects the keyboard, pulls out the wires from beneath the panel. The doors to his service elevator open to reveal Hans Gruber, impeccably dressed, lean, and handsome. He steps out into the lobby like he owns the building. And, in a way, he does. Tio steps to the door of the control room and tosses Hans a computer card. Hans goes to the front door, waves the card over a magnetic plate. An LED blinks, and the door locks with a thud. Hans looks out at the street. Appropriately enough, not a creature is stirring. Century City is quiet. An elevator opens, revealing 10 more men, all armed with Kalashnikov machine guns, are carrying canvas kit bags. One of them, Eddie, a rugged American in his 20s, goes to the dead guard and immediately begins changing into his clothes. Meanwhile, Carl takes a tool case from the elevator and joins his brother Tony, playfully grabbing him. They head for the basement stairwell. Tio leaves the control room and nods to Hans. Eddie finishes adjusting buttons and snapping on his pilfered uniform. He takes his position behind the front desk. Hans looks at his watch and seems pleased. He steps into the service elevator with the others and presses the button for the 30th floor. The entire sequence has taken maybe 60 seconds. In Ellis's bathroom, McClane is still barefoot, his pant leg now rolled up above his ankles. He stretches his toes again. Damn, it works. He lights up a new Marlboro, dials a number on the bathroom phone. A large sign in the building basement says, Pacific Bell Employees Only. Inside, Tony stands in front of an intimidating matrix of phone lines, but what he has in mind doesn't require a doctorate in electrical engineering. Carl comes over, gives his elder brother a punch in the arm, pointing what to do. Together they focus on 4 CPV plastic conduits, which run out of the main panel over their heads. Tony nods. He opens a case, revealing a compact electric chainsaw. McClane on the bathroom phone. Argyle? Argyle is reclining on the seat. The music is so loud, it's nearly impossible to hear. Hey, John, what's the word on you and your lady? The vote's not in yet. Carl cuts through the 4 tubes, one at a time. Not in yet? What's that supposed to mean? What do you want, all my children? We're making progress. After I get my foot out of my mouth, then we'll be really cooking. Then I can... He stops and gently taps the phone cradle. There's no dial tone. Argyle looks at the phone. What? Hey, Mr. Mac, you there? He turns down the music, but there is no one on the line. To himself. Well, call me back, John. You got the number. He hangs up and turns the volume back up. McClane hangs up the original phone, then tries the other one on the desk, but it too is dead. Hans and the others approaching the 30th floor in the service elevator. As they grow closer, we hear the noise of the speakers growing louder and louder. The men cock their weapons and brace themselves as the car stops and the elevator doors open. On the sound of gunshots and screams, we cut to McClane, who grabs his shoulder harness off the back of the chair and moves quickly to the doorway. He looks down the hall. 2 terrorists, Franco and Fritz, armed with M5 machine guns, searching the offices on the hall one by one. They open a door, look in from the hallway, and move on quickly to the next. They are 4 offices away, and moving fast. McClane looks across the corridor and sees the stairwell door, too far to reach without being seen. He steps back, throws off the safety on his Beretta, and braces himself. He opens the door, peers through a crack at Franco and Fritz. His eyes scan their weapons. He's totally outgunned, and he knows it. Franco and Fritz reach the office just before Ellis's and throw open the door, revealing the man and woman who interrupted Holly and McClane a few minutes before, now in the throes of passionate lovemaking on the desk. The 2 terrorists smile at each other, then enter the office. A moment later, the man, trying to desperately pull up his pants, and the woman, buttoning her blouse, are pushed out into the hall and toward the larger group by Fritz. The other terrorist, Franco, goes to Ellis's office and opens the door, but it's empty. McClane's bare feet padding quickly up the concrete stairs 2 at a time in the stairwell. We follow him and then out onto the 31st floor. This is the mezzanine floor immediately above the main Nakatomi lobby. McClane sees Tio and Christoph wheeling carts of equipment. McClane ducks back into the stairwell and he runs up another flight, out onto unfinished floor. Eventually, it will be one large secretarial pool, but only a portion is completed, half-finished partitions and office furniture in its original plastic wrapping is everywhere. One end has a few lonely finished working areas. McClane moves quickly to a desk and picks up a phone. It's out. Shit! He looks out the window at the neighboring building. A high-rise apartment building a half a block away sparkles with lights. McClane stares at a pretty girl in her bedroom. She's wearing drop-dead underwear right out of a Victoria's Secret catalog. As we watch, she flops down on her bed and with one long leg in the air, effortlessly dials a call on her high-tech phone. It seems so easy. Frustrated, McClane watches this and knits his brow. Think! The employees have been herded to the center of the room where the desks have been pulled back. Many people are whimpering. Holly looks around the room for McClane. She's so intent on this, she doesn't see one terrorist waving her forward. Exasperated, he shoves her. Her glare at him shows us her mettle. A wider shot as the employees are bunched together. Ellis seeks out Holly. He's clearly scared but trying to fake courage. He pats her hand reassuringly. Hans steps up on top of a desk and looks over the group. He reaches into a pocket and several people cringe. What comes out is a Bottega Veneta pocket notebook. He checks his own scribblings like a dais speaker. Soothing, in control. Ladies and gentlemen, due to the Nakatomi Corporation's legacy of greed around the globe, it is about to be taught a lesson on real power. You will be witnesses. If our demands are not met, however, a sad smile, you may become participants instead. A beat, checking his notes. Now, where is Takagi? Where is the man who used to be in charge here? A slight smile. Takagi is shoved forward. He's worried, but far from cowed. Hans steps toward him and extends a hand. Quite civil. Mr. Takagi, how do you do? My name is Hans Gruber. Takagi is confused by his charm. Hans waves politely in the direction of an elevator with an armed escort and takes the executive away. The camera adjusts to show Holly concerned. McClane pauses outside the stairwell door to the 33rd floor. He presses the handle and cracks the door open to reveal a computer floor. Computer machinery drones on under the lights behind plate glass windows. McClane quietly closes the door and moves to another floor. 22 construction, 33 computers. Hans, Takagi, Carl, and Tony riding silently. Hans, alone, seems relaxed. He whistles. We recognize it as a snatch of Wagner. Nice suit. Hans Phillips? London? Takagi stares at him speechless. I have two myself. A beat as he exits. I'm told Arafat shops there too. McClane starts to open the stairwell door to the machine floor when a noise above him gets his attention. He moves silently up one flight to the roof. Quietly he cracks the door and looks out onto a machine floor, onto the lower level of the roof. 3 terrorists, James, Uli, and Heinrich, are unpacking the wooden crates we saw in the garage from the service elevator. It's not clear what they're doing, but it seems very military-like and ominously defensive. Heinrich points up to the ceiling and says something in German. The others nod. Heinrich starts to turn toward the camera and McClane closes the door and slips back down the stairs. Hans enters the conference room and looks around. When Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. To Takagi. The benefits of a classical education. Hans admires a scale model of a bridge. Behind him are photographs of the gorge, where the bridge will be constructed. Carl and Tony listen. Takagi watches. It's beautiful. I always enjoyed models as a boy. The exactness, the attention to every foreseeable detail. Perfection. Takagi defensively. This is what this is all about? A building project in Indonesia? Contrary to what you people think, we're going to develop that region, not exploit it. Hans straightens and looks hard at Takagi. I believe you. I read the article in Forbes. He smiles. Takagi looks confused. Hans puts a friendly arm around Takagi's shoulder and guides him to the adjacent boardroom where Tio types in commands into a built-in computer console. Mr. Takagi, we could discuss industrialization of men's fashions all day, but I'm afraid my associate Mr. Tio has some questions for you. Sort of fill-in-the-blanks questions, actually. We jump cut to a computer screen that spits out Nakatomi Corporation, board workstation. Enter central computer code key. Tio fingers poised over the keyboard. Hans sits opposite. Takagi stands like the accused at the foot of the table. He has just read the screen and bursts, I don't have that code. You broke in here to access our computer? Any information you could get, they wake up in Tokyo in the morning, they'll change it. You won't be able to blackmail our executives or threaten. Hans barks him to silence. Sit down! Takagi complies. Hans is abruptly compassionate and quiet. Mr. Takagi, I'm not interested in your computer. I'm interested in the $640 million in negotiable bearer bonds you have in your vault. Takagi's reaction. Yes, I know about them. The code key is a necessary step in accessing the vault. You want money? What kind of terrorists are you? Hans, amused. Who said we were terrorists? McClane tiptoes along, gun held ready. He can hear the mumble of voices from the conference room and moves slowly towards it. Hans slowly takes out his Walther and his silencer. He feels his silencer a moment as if making a decision, then slips it back into his coat pocket. Hans weighing the gun. The code key, please? It's useless to you. There's 7 safeguards on our vault, and the code key is only one of them. You'll never get it open. Hans lifts the gun. Then there's no reason not to tell us. Aside to Carl. I told you. It's not over. Hans gives them both a look like an annoyed schoolmaster, turns back to Takagi. This is a nice suit to ruin, Mr. Takagi. I'm going to count to 3. There will not be a 4. Give me the code. He cocks the gun. I don't know it. Get on a goddamn jet to Tokyo and ask the chairman. I'm telling you, you're just going to have to kill me. Okay. Bang! Hans pulls the trigger. McClane reacts as if he were shot. The glass doors to the boardroom are splattered red and dripping. Takagi is still seated inside, but the chair is flat on its back, blood flowing out into the carpet. Hans springs to his feet. We do it the hard way. Tony, see if you can dispose of that. The body. Carl, you'd better check Heinrich's work up on the machine floor. Carl, in the midst of handing Tio a $50 bill, nods. McClane is stunned outside. He sees Hans move and tries to retreat, but his gun bumps the underside of the table. Hans hears it, and Carl is the first to move. Carl springs through the door and finds nothing. He checks the 2 adjoining rooms. The first is deserted. The second is locked. He returns to Hans. Nothing. Hans nods. See to Heinrich. And to Tio. Now you can break the code key? Tio grins. You didn't bring me along for a charming personality. As he heads for the elevator. Tio under his breath. Though you could have. Hans smiles, confident in his team, and follows. Camera settles on the door that Carl found locked. Inside the supply closet, McClane slowly lets out a breath, praying softly. Argyle, tell me you heard the shot. Tell me you heard the shot, and you're calling the police right now. Argyle is on the car phone. The music is playing. I'm working, honey, working hard. Course I'll be by later to pick you up. Have I ever lied to you? My boss, he thinks I'm cruising to Palm Springs. Heinrich presses something into a niche here, scrambles like a monkey to a new position. Helped by one of his men, he jumps down and moves to another area, climbs up again, removing something from his shoulder bag. Hans and Tio enter the safe room. The huge corporate safe looms in front of them. Tio places 3 kit bags onto a table and rolls up his sleeves. He swivels a computer console into handy reach and sits down. How long? 30 minutes to break the code, 2 hours for the 5 mechanicals. The 7th lock, that's out of my hands. If the plan works, the FBI will get rid of it for us. Tio grins and begins typing. He types, begin algorithm code program. Random numbers and letters going by. AAAA 1111, AAAB 11112. McClane moves out onto the 31st floor, angry at himself. Why the fuck didn't you stop him? Because, you ignorant son of a bitch, you'd be dead too. Think, goddammit. Suddenly he looks up at the ceiling and sees a sprinkler head. His look drops to the wall and focuses on a small red fire alarm switch by the door. We cut to an LA fire station. An alarm sounds. Quickly, firemen move to their machines as the voice of a 911 dispatcher drones. Main Wilshire units, 2-alarm fire at Nakatomi Plaza. The voice continues as the station doors open. The fire alarm indicator light in Nakatomi ground floor shows which floor has sounded the fire alarm. It suddenly begins flashing and emitting short, loud beeps. Eddie, the terrorist in the guard's uniform and manning the station, immediately picks up his CB. McClane stands at the window, looking northward for fire trucks. Suddenly we see the flashing red lights of 4 engines in traffic 2 miles away. Come on, baby, come to Papa. I'm gonna kiss your goddamn Dalmatian. Hans rides the elevator back to the 30th floor with Tony. Calmly to Eddie on the CB. Call 911. Give them the name and badge number on your uniform and cancel the alarm. Then disable the system. He looks across at Tony and presses the talk button again. Eddie, what floor did the alarm go off? The machine floor has heard the alarm too. Heinrich, Marco, and Uli hear the alarm and continue their mysterious work. McClane stands silhouetted against the wall. In the distance, he can see another fire truck swing off Santa Monica onto the Avenue of Stars. Suddenly, the red light on the first truck goes out, then the second. McClane watches in disbelief. The trucks slow and turn down separate side streets, heading for home. McClane realizing, son of a bitch! Just then, the elevator bell rings, and we hear the elevator doors open. A figure, Tony, slips into the shadows, his machine gun drawn. We move with him from the elevator area until he reaches the light switch and throws it, illuminating the entire floor. McClane is gone. He's under a desk. He takes in his options. His point of view sees the feet of Tony. They move slowly in his direction. McClane looks down the aisle next to the windows. It leads to a series of cubicles at the other end of the floor and is a clear path if he can make it past Tony. Tony moves steadily toward the exit where he saw McClane. The fire has been called off, my friend. No one is coming to help you. You might as well come out and join the others. He fingers the trigger of his machine gun. I promise not to hurt you. Moving more confidently, he steps up to McClane's desk then around it, and fires a blast into space. It is empty. As the sound of the machine gun fades, he listens and hears another noise. A noise coming from the other end of the room near the cubicles. Tony heads toward the noise. Sensing a trap, he moves past each cubicle carefully, checking each office until he reaches the doorway of the last one. The sound is just around the partition. He tenses and then spins into the cubicle. A radial arm saw spins noisily. Tony grins at his nervousness. He moves to turn it off, not realizing the sound has buried the soft rustle of McClane, who steps into frame behind him, shoves his pistol barrel against Tony's temple. "Freeze! Police! Don't move, or name your beneficiary." Tony doesn't. McClane cocks his Beretta. Tony watches him calmly. "You won't hurt me." "Yeah, why not?" "Because you are a policeman. There are rules for policemen." "Yeah, my captain keeps telling me the same thing." McClane suddenly whips Tony across the head. Tony reels and then swallows, worried for the first time. "Let's go." Suddenly, Tony spins to the side and McClane fires, but the big man's momentum slams McClane into a filing cabinet and sends his pistol into the hall. Tony fires his machine gun, but McClane kicks him into the desk. He locks his arm around the big man's neck in a hold that sends Tony reeling into the hall. McClane holds on as they slam through several plastic board partitions. They careen across the hall into the stairwell door, opening it, and crash into the stairwell landing. Below, on the concrete steps, into the wall on the landing below. For a moment, both men lie still. McClane, still holding onto Tommy's neck, releases it, and the man flops sickeningly to the side. For a moment, McClane just looks at the dead man, then, slowly and methodically, begins to search him. He turns all of his pockets inside out, looks at the clothing labels, stares long and very hard at the California driver's license with Tony's picture on it. He expertly examines the machine gun when a hissing sound comes from somewhere and attracts his attention. He rises, moves cautiously to the source. It's Tony's CB, which has fallen from the dead man's waist during the struggle. McClane stares at it, formulating a plan. We pan from Tony's now shoeless feet to McClane, who sits on the floor near the body, hurriedly lacing up the dead terrorist's boots on his own feet. He ties the last lace and tries to take a couple of steps. He winces in pain and goes off balance. Quickly he starts taking the boots off. 1,000,000 terrorists in the world, and I kill the one with feet smaller than my sister. He yanks off the boots and tosses them into the garbage. He then pulls the body up and sets it down on a secretary's chair. He starts to push it along when he gets an idea and moves to a desk where he scribbles a note we cannot read on a piece of paper. His eyes then fall on some Christmas decorations nearby. He smiles to himself. We are tight on McClane's back as he pushes Tony's body on a swivel chair into the elevator. We cannot see Tony's head. The camera adjusts as McClane pushes the button for the 31st and 30th floor. We notice he's got the dead man's machine gun and that a wooden desk ruler protrudes from McClane's back pocket. The elevator doors close and the car starts down. After it's dropped only a half floor, McClane forces the doors open with his fingers, stopping the car between the floors. Using the ruler, he blocks open the inside doors and then opens the outside doors of the floor above. With his fingers, he pulls himself up onto the carpeted floor, then up onto the roof of the car. Once on the roof of the car, he reaches over the edge and removes the ruler, closing the inside doors and setting the car in motion again. The hostages have been gathered together in a group in the center of the open floor, with guards flanking them. The elevators are barely visible from the edge of the group, which is where Ginny and Holly are sitting. Ginny winces, uncomfortable on the floor. Holly soothes her, and Hans stands in front of them like a stern camp counselor in front of the assembled bunk. I wanted this to be professional, efficient, adult, and cooperative. Not a lot to ask. Alas, your Mr. Takagi did not see it that way. So he won't be joining us for the rest of his life. As that sinks in, we are prepared to go any way you make us. When we have achieved our aims, you can walk out of here, or be carried out. Decide now, each of you, but remember that we have planned everything to the last detail. We are completely in charge. A ding attracts his attention, and he turns. The elevator doors open, and Fritz, who guards the area, whirls, gun held ready. His jaw drops as he sees Tony's body, still and dead, flopped in a swivel chair, a red Santa hat gaily placed on his head. Hans reacts, indicating the hostages. Get them over there! Schnell! The guard quickly hustles the hostages away as Hans crosses to the elevator. But before he does, Holly sees the body and reacts. She knows her husband's abilities, not to mention his twisted sense of humor. As Fritz stands there confused, Hans comes to the elevator with Franco, lifts Tony's chin and sees that his neck has been snapped. He sees the folded piece of paper in Tony's collar and takes it out. It reads, "Now I have a machine gun. Ho ho ho." Perhaps a security guard we overlooked? Hans lifts Tony's chin again and lets the head flop over. Thoughtfully. Security guard? They're usually tired and burnt-out old policemen growing fat on a pension. This is something else. McClane is staring through a tiny crack at the scene below him from the roof of the elevator. The camera adjusts from Fritz in the background to Hans and Fritz just below. McClane is writing in his weather-beaten cop's notebook. The first notation is number of hostages, Holly plus 30. Odd. Then it says number of terrorists. As we watch, he adds 3, ? 1 in the lobby, ? 2 with the hostages, plus one's on the roof, 3. Fritz's voice, slightly spooked. We have to do something, Hans. Hans is not pleased. Yes, we have to tell Carl his brother is dead. Tell him to come down. Now McClane writes, Hans equals leader. Carl equals brother. Use this? As Fritz calls Carl on his CB, Hans looks at Franco. Franco, you and Fritz take the body upstairs and out of sight. I don't want the hostages to think too much. On top of the elevator car, listening to the conversation below, Franco and Fritz step into the car and the doors on the elevator close. The car accelerates upwards, and McClane grabs onto the heavy, grease-coated cables to help his balance. Already his clothes are soiled. His face and feet, arms and hair are dark from dirt and sweat. The car speeds up the shaft, passing the car, bringing Carl down to the hostage floor, and stops at the machine floor. The door opens, and McClane hears them roll the chair with the body off the car. McClane looks up. A metal catwalk runs around the inside of the elevator shaft. McClane pulls himself up onto it. As he moves along the catwalk looking for a way out, he passes an earmarked metal door, 2 foot by 3 foot. McClane pushes it open and looks in. Total darkness. He takes out a coin, first a quarter. He stops and switches to a nickel. He throws it into the void. There's a full 4 seconds until we hear it ching and bounce on concrete far below. You don't have to be a mathematic whiz to know that that's a long drop. Jesus! He moves cautiously around a corner and we see a metal ladder leading up to a door marked pump room. Opening the door, McClane enters a darkened pump room, damp and full of pipes. He goes to another door. He cracks the door and looks out. The lower level of the roof, open and deserted. Only a heliport above him is higher. We cut to the 30th floor. Hostages. Widen as a filing cabinet is flung across the floor, drawers slamming out and papers flying. Carl has done this, and he's barely started. He flings a lamp against the wall, punches a hole into the plaster. Finally, Hans goes to him, lays controlling hands on the man's shoulder. I know what you are feeling, but this is not productive. Carl pushes him away. He was my only brother, my only family. I want blood for my blood. We search now. He starts to move, and Hans stops him. No. Heinrich's team must finish planting the detonators, and Tio needs time on the vault. After the police come, they'll waste hours trying to negotiate. That's when we search for this man. Until then, we do not alter the plan. And if he alters it? For once, Hans doesn't have an answer. The hostages have heard the alarm and can see and sense the agitation among their captors. Ellis slides over to Holly. What's happening? They don't look happy. Something has gone wrong. The police? Holly shakes her head. John. John? Christ! He could fuck this whole thing up. What does he think he's doing? How about his job? His job is 3,000 miles away. Without him, they might let us go. At least we have a chance. Quietly. Tell that to Mr. Takagi. McClane climbs to the heliport and leans against the leeward side of a wall surrounding it. Shielded from wind, he pulls out the CB, turns to Channel 9, and starts broadcasting. Mayday! Mayday! Anyone! Terrorists have seized the Nakatomi building and are holding 30 or more hostages. I say again. Hans, Carl, Fritz, and Franco hear the clear signal over Hans's CB. Unknown number of terrorists, 6 or more, armed with automatic weapons at Nakatomi Century City. Somebody answer me, goddammit! Carl looks almost satisfied. The roof. It's the best place to transmit. They move. In the Los Angeles Emergency Dispatch Center, a supervisor weaves her way back from a break room towards a dispatcher who's monitoring the call. It's the same address as the fire signal. The supervisor frowning. The false alarm? I'll handle it. She plugs in her headset. Her condescending, arrogant tone is like the one in the famous tape where the dispatch lady spends so much time on red tape that the patient dies. Attention, whoever you are. This channel is reserved for emergency calls only. No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza? The service elevator with Franco and Fritz. No one kills him but me. It's an order that Carl has given. The look he gives to the other two backs it up. Carl checks his magazine, slaps it onto his rifle as the elevator opens to the roof. McClane moves around the roof, circling the helipad, making sure he has a good enough view to avoid being ambushed. He can't see in all directions at once, but he's doing the best he can. They've already killed one hostage, and they're fortifying their positions while we're bullshitting. Now send police backup ASAP. Sir, I've told you already, this is a reserved channel. If this is an emergency call, dial 911 on your telephone. Otherwise, I will report you to the police. McClane yells to the radio. Fine! Report me! Hey, come down here and fucking arrest me! Send the police, now! Suddenly, machine gun shells rip into the concrete wall in front of him. The noise is deafening. Both the supervisor and dispatcher reach for their headsets in pain from the intense sound. McClane runs on the roof. Tracer bullets rip into the wall behind him. He reaches the corner and sees the other two terrorists moving toward him. Before they see him, he leaps down to the next level out of range of Carl. The dispatcher looks critically at the supervisor in sudden silence. Have a black and white do a drive-by. On a counter, we go tight as one after another. Hostess Twinkie is stacked up on the counter. Camera widens and we see a young male clerk who stifles a smile. Another teenage employee behind the counter smothers a laugh. The customer is Powell, young for a police veteran, old for the rest of the world. I thought you guys ate donuts. They're for my wife. She's pregnant. If I knew she was going to eat a dozen at a shot, I would have bought stock in the company. The clerk nods and puts them in a bag. As Powell pays, suddenly his belt radio crackles to life. Dispatch to 1 Adam 10, over. Powell grabs the radio and speaks into it. 1 Adam 10, go ahead. Investigate a code 2 at Nakatomi Plaza, Century City. He's thinking. Nakatomi Plaza? He moves to the door and steps outside. Powell looks toward the horizon and up. There it is, Nakatomi, in all its gleaming glory. 1 Adam 10, do you copy? Powell is already moving to the car. He tosses in the Twinkies and hops behind the wheel. Roger, dispatch, I'm on the way. He burns rubber leaving the store. McClane runs for his life from Fritz and Franco. He doesn't realize he's being herded around the building toward Carl. Suddenly, McClane turns a corner and sees him. The big man fires a burst, and McClane ducks back, stopping at the exterior door to the pump room he used before. It is locked from the inside. He blows the lock off with a burst from his machine gun and slips into the darkness. Coming quickly out of the pump room, McClane picks his way over the same ground as a few minutes before and opens the door to the elevator shaft. The dimly lit shaft yawns before him. He starts down the ladder back to the catwalk and moves along it, but stops. The catwalk just ends and the elevator is gone. Carl crosses the pump room, starts to open the door to the elevator shaft, when suddenly their radio crackles. Carl, Franco, did you catch him? No, but he's in the elevator shaft. Perfect. The elevators are locked off. He can't escape. Just shut him in and return to base. Hans, he killed my brother. More firmly. Carl, I know you want him, but the police are probably on their way. Maybe we can convince them it was all a mistake, but not if they hear gunshots. If you lock him in, he'll be neutralized. Now do it! Carl? Carl! Carl turns off his radio. In the light of their flashlights, the two other terrorists look at Carl in stunned disbelief. He opens the door to the elevator shaft. McClane has overheard enough of this to realize he's in deep shit. He backtracks to the airshaft door and strikes a cigarette lighter. Carl steps off the ladder to the catwalk, his own gun held ready. Hearing Carl's approach, McClane thinks fast, looks down at his narrow confines, and then at his weapon. Its canvas gun sling and metal strap slides. Quickly, McClane lets out all the slack in the sling. Then he braces the weapon across the outside opening of the airshaft door and lowers himself into the airshaft. Holding onto the canvas sling with his elbows bent over like a kid doing half-assed skin the cat on a swing set. His feet slowly move down the smooth aluminum walls until they reach the top of the air duct and then dangle in the open space. He straightens his arm to give him length enough to touch the bottom edge of the duct. Suddenly he feels something give above him and he looks up. The gunsling was designed to carry a gun on a man and not vice versa. The first few inches of extra canvas are sliding through the clips, and now they're gone, and he will be too. Carl moves silently toward the corner. Now only inches from the bottom edge, McClane's arms are fully extended. He hears Carl on the metal catwalk. His muscles strain and quiver. One of the canvas ends slips through the clip. McClane falling. He grabs the ledge of the air duct as he falls, and his body slams into the aluminum wall with an echoing boom. Above him on the catwalk, the rifle rattles on the metal outside a door. Carl freezes, unsure of the sound. McClane holding onto the ledge by his hands. With every ounce of strength he tries to pull himself up into the horizontal duct, clawing for a hold. Carl rounds the corner and sees McClane's rifle lying beneath the doorway. He moves to the small door and shines his light. He aims his rifle down into the air shaft, ready to fire. The shaft is deserted. Moving his light around, he sees the air duct. Without hesitation, he turns and backtracks to the pump room door. He lies exhausted and motionless in the narrow crawl space. He awkwardly fishes out the lighter from his shirt pocket and thumbs it on. The flickering glow shows him it ain't no place for claustrophobics. It's a long, dark and narrow corridor full of weird shadows. The far end, if there even is one, is black. Whew, for a moment there I was worried. He turns out his lighter and starts crawling. The 3 terrorists on the machine floor rush down from the roof in hot pursuit, Carl leading the way through the door. Carl points quickly to the left and right, where there are a series of rooms. The others check these, while Carl approaches the camera, trigger finger itching. Almost immediately, the others return. Franco whispers, "Nothing." Carl looks puzzled. When he thinks and mentally retraces McClane's few options, Carl's eyes scan the architecture. Then suddenly he looks up. The ceiling is crisscrossed with air ducts. He fires a burst into the duct. McClane remains motionless in the air duct. 3-quarter-sized holes inches from his face show how close Carl came to nailing him. Sweat covers his face and drips silently onto the aluminum. Carl listens patiently for a second, and then the other 2 terrorists return. "Nothing." Carl hesitates a moment, fighting his instincts before finally turning to go. Suddenly, the duct McClane is in groans slightly under his weight. Carl stops and looks up at the matrix of aluminum ductwork, trying to single out the source of the sound. He steps back into the room and raises his rifle. Holding it upward, he presses the barrel into the belly of McClane's air duct, feeling for weight. The weight of a body. McClane sees the indentation of the barrel pressing into the aluminum 15 feet away. There is a pause and another 3 feet closer. He can hear Carl's footsteps on the concrete, moving slowly below the duct. His eyes are fixed above him on the air duct. He presses the barrel up again. Still nothing. Silently, McClane moves his hand and slowly draws his Beretta. The next indentation presses up 6 feet away. McClane points his gun downward and waits. Carl stops directly below him. The barrel starts up and just touches the duct under McClane when Franco returns to the door and calls, "Carl! Police! Come on!" Carl hesitates, then lowers his gun and leaves. McClane hears the door close and lowers his head. On the 33rd floor in the safe room, a large LED window in front of the safe beeps and letters creep by. Access code accepted. We hear a clunk. The camera adjusts to show Tio, who grins. Now his computer screen reads, "Lock number 1 disabled. Do you wish to proceed?" Tio puts goggles on his eyes, holds out his hands towards Christoph, like a doctor requesting a scalpel. Christoph gives him a giant drill. "You bet your ass I'm gonna proceed." He turns on the drill. The street is empty and quiet below Century City. A lone police black and white pulls out of the shadows of a side street and begins a slow cruise toward the Nakatomi building. Powell is driving alone. He stares up at the tower. It seems calm. Its glowing lights matching the warmth of the holiday decorations on the streets. Powell slows to a stop and scans the premises. In the lobby, we see Eddie, sitting behind the desk. Powell reports to his radio. "Guard inside, no sign of disturbance." "I'm going up for a closer look." He pulls in and parks in the front. McClane punches out a ceiling vent and drops down into the machine room. For a moment he stands, listening for sounds of movement, but the floor is quiet. He goes to the stairwell, the edge of the roof. Suddenly a tall terrorist, James, moves along the wall and looks over at Powell's car. The elevator doors open on Carl, Franco, and Fritz. They step out into the darkened floor. We see a large number 3 painted on the door of this floor. They move quickly toward the windows on the avenue of the Star side, where a terrorist, Alexander, with a bar rifle has set up a machine gun nest under the half-open window. Directly below him we see Powell's car. Alexander pans the police car with his weapons, finger on the trigger. This is clearly a man hungry for action. Hans watches from above. He raises his CB. His usual calm. Eddie? Eddie picks up his CB. He watches Powell coming down the stairs. Had a feeling you'd be calling. Let him in. Eddie is a little startled, but he moves quickly. Alexander also hears. His eager expression fades. But orders are orders. Powell tries the front doors, but they are locked. Eddie comes hustling across and unlocks the door with a magnetic card. Evening, officer. What's up? Powell steps in and looks around. Bland holiday muzak filters from speakers here. Let it snow. We got an emergency call that there was a problem here? McClane makes his way to the Avenue of Stars side of the building and enters the boardroom where Takagi was shot. McClane goes to the window and looks down at the street. He sees Powell's car. All right! McClane waits, expectant. 5, 10 seconds, but no commotion, no shouting. He frowns. Where the fuck is the cavalry? Powell walks casually across the slick floor, eyes panning the area. Eddie sits casually watching a game on one of his monitor screens. We already had that false alarm, you ask me. Goddamn computers sent you out on another wild goose chase. They've been chasing bugs in that system since they installed it. To the screen. Oh shit, come on, I got $50 on you assholes. Powell's face shows us he's starting to think he's wasting his time. McClane, the silent tension is driving him crazy. Come on. Who's in that car, Stevie Wonder? He makes up his mind. He lifts one of the big chairs and swings it at the window. The tempered glass whitens on the first blow. James sees the glass whiten below him and shouts into his mic. Heinrich hears the radio and shouts to Marco, who grabs his machine gun and runs. Eddie watches confidently as Powell moves through the lobby, looking for signs of trouble. Uli is here, gun held ready around the corner. McClane draws the chair back for the final hit when a terrorist, Marco, appears at the door. Both men react, but Marco already has his gun up. He fires a round at McClane. The bullet rips into the tabletop and chair. McClane goes down behind the table. Marco smiles and moves around to the other side of the table, but finds no one. He looks around frantically, then squats beneath and sees McClane lying prone, his pistol trained on him. Drop it or you're a rug stain. Just then, Heinrich, the terrorist, steps into the doorway and sees the situation. Marco, duck! Marco dives sideways, but Heinrich still isn't quick enough. McClane fires twice, and Heinrich drops sprawling in the hallway, machine gun firing blindly until it hits the floor. They can hear the faint gunshots on the hostage floor, and Holly pales. Powell can only hear "Let It Snow." He stops just a yard from seeing the armed terrorist and turns back. Screw this. He turns back. Marco springs on top of a huge table. McClane rolls on his back so he can cover either angle, but it's clear that Marco is in the more enviable position. Marco slamming the tabletop with a fresh magazine and smiling. Next time, don't hesitate. He leans his machine gun over the edge. McClane aims directly above him and fires twice into the underside of the table. The bullets rip through the table, and Marco, who drops beside McClane. Thanks for the advice. Powell heads for the door. Eddie moves to lock up after him. Sorry to waste your time. Merry Christmas. Powell goes out. McClane rolls out from under the table and goes to the window. He looks down just in time to see Powell heading for the car. Aw, man, please, no! Desperately, he leans on the glass, which cracks again, on the verge of going. McClane thinks and looks over his shoulder at the body of Marco. Powell checks in on his radio. Unconsciously, he begins to hum the music he overheard in the lobby. 1 Adam 10 to 6421. We had a wild goose chase on that 436. Everything's okay here, over. He's waiting and loosening his tie. He murmurs, Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the do delightful. Roger, 1 Adam 10. We thought it was a crank call anyway. Clear the code 8. Roger. Putting the car in gear. Let it snow, let it snow. Suddenly, Marco's body crashes onto the hood of his car. Powell, terrified. Jesus H. Christ! He grabs his radio. 6421, this is 1 Adam 10. Suddenly, a barrage of machine gun fire from Alexander on the 3rd floor drowns out his call. Powell ducks and flattens against the seats as bullets blow out the front window, covering him in glass. Roger, 1 Adam 10, please repeat. But Powell accelerates in reverse away from the building, keeping his head low and praying he doesn't hit anything as the bullets follow him, digging into the asphalt. A half block away, his car runs off of the pavement and down a slope, finally bouncing to a jarring halt in the parking lot, which is destined to become police headquarters a few pages from now. Powell sits up and clutches the mic. 1 Adam 10, under automatic rifle fire at Nakatomi, requesting immediate backup and SWAT assistance. McClane looks down at Powell and grins. Welcome to the party, pal. We go wide on a police scanner. We take in all the action at the TV station. All color coordination and slickness. Richard Thornburg, local TV news reporter, is on the phone to his girlfriend. Of course I can get us a table. Wolfgang and me, we're like that. I interviewed him. Hold on, babe. He covers the mouthpiece because he's become aware of what's coming from the scanner. Various voices speak. Attention all units. Officer pinned down by automatic weapon fire at Nakatomi, Century City. Request assistance, etc. Powell's voice intermixed with all this. Guys, you want to cut through the red tape? They practically turned this car into Swiss cheese. Thornburg is pleased. All right. He drops the phone and picks up another and shouts. Mary, this is Dick. I want a remote truck and a crew to meet me at the South Gate in 15. Damn right, 15 minutes. Where are we going? Hearing gunshots through the radio. For an Emmy! Now, hearing machine gun fire, Thornburg hangs up the second phone and runs out of the room. The camera pans back to the first phone. The woman's voice. Richard? Richard? Sirens wail as the first few police cars arrive at Century City. Powell sees them and waves them back, points to the 3rd floor. Ellis leans back and closes his eyes, luxuriating in the sound of wailing police sirens. He looks at Holly. I never thought I'd love to hear that sound. Hans, Karl, Fritz, and Franco confer. Mid-speech. All of you stay at your posts. We knew that the police action was inevitable. In fact, it's necessary. So, let them start their feeble efforts. Until then, stay calm. We have the hostages, remember. We are still in charge. Suddenly, Hans's CB crackles to life. Hans picks it up. I told all of you I want radio silence until further... McClane has got a CB on the table, and on. His cop's notebook is out again. He's already upgraded the number of terrorists to 12, minus 3 equals 9, and then added other information. As he speaks, he takes ammo clips the dead men dropped, their sidearms, etc. Gee, I'm sorry, Hans. Nobody gave me the message. You should have put it on the bulletin board. Anyway, I thought you and Franco and Carl and the other boys might be lonely, now that I waxed Tony and Marco and their buddy, So, I invited some of you guys for my card game. In the office, the terrorists react, startled as McClane name drops. How does he know so much about... Hans waving for silence. Ah, nice of you to call. I assume you are our mysterious party crasher? You are most troublesome for a security guard. Moving down the corridor, now armed with Marco's machine gun, and carrying Heinrich's kit bag, he seems more lethal. McClane into the CB. Bzz. Sorry, Hans, wrong guess. Would you like to go for double jeopardy, where the stakes are double and the scores really change? He rolls Heinrich over, and is delighted to find a pack of Gauloises on the man's pocket. He takes them and pats the dead man's face. It's bad for your health anyway. Who are you then? Just the fly in the ointment, Hans. The monkey in the wrench. The pain in the ass. McClane stops mid-speech. He just opened the kit bag Heinrich had over his shoulder when he died. Now McClane takes out the contents. Dozens and dozens of explosive detonators marked danger. And a chunk of plastique the size of an electric razor. He whistles in surprise to himself. In the office, Hans turns off his mic for a moment and turns to Carl. Check on all the others. Don't use the radio. See if he's lying about Marco, and find out if anyone else is missing. He moves. Then Hans goes back onto the CB. Meanwhile, McClane smiles at the telltale static as Hans goes off and on. He knows what's happening. Now he starts to walk down a corridor, eyes panning from the elevator to the stairwell doors. Mr. Mystery Guest, are you still there? I wouldn't think of leaving, Hans, unless you want to open the front door. I'm afraid not, but you have me at a loss. You know my name, but who are you? Scornfully. Just another American who saw too many movies as a child? Another orphan of a bankrupt culture who thinks he's John Wayne, Rambo, Marshall Dillon? Actually, I was always partial to Roy Rogers. I really dug those sequin shirts. Hans, harshly. Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy? A light blinks on the elevator. After a long pause, McClane responds, Yippee-yi-yay, motherfucker. McClane goes quietly through the stairwell door and is gone by the time the search party steps onto the floor. Hans sits quietly thinking. Carl steps off the elevator on the 30th floor and goes through the crowd of hostages to Hans. Quietly. He wasn't lying about Marco. He's 30 stories down on the street. The other man is Heinrich, and I found his body upstairs. He pauses. Hans looks alarmed. And his bag is missing. He had the detonators. Into the CB. Tio! With Christoph, he has drilled 2 holes in the safe and is working on a third when he hears the CB. He turns off the drill and answers. Yo! We may have some problems. How is your schedule? Tio moves to his computer screen, which shows a schematic of the safe, blinking icons, and the words Mechanicals number 1 and number 2 disabled. 3 down, 4 to go. Then don't waste time talking to me. Suddenly, they all react to the nearby CB transmitter which broadcasts. This is Sergeant Al Powell of Los Angeles Police Department. If the person who radioed for help on this channel can hear me, acknowledge this transmission. I say again. To the CB. I read you, Powell. You the guy in the car? Powell stands in front of his destroyed cruiser and looks up at the building. Behind him, technicians, city power and light personnel, SWAT officers in protective gear, etc. They arrive from all directions. A trailer is being backed into a parking lot, which will become the police center of operations. It's like watching a small town being constructed right before your eyes. What's left of him? Can you identify yourself? Hans and Carl listen intently. Maybe later. Just listen fast because this is a party line and the neighbors are trigger happy. Now here's the skinny. There's 30 or so hostages on the 30th floor, with probably 2 or 3 guards to cover a group that size. The leader here is named Hans. Besides the pea shooter he ventilated your car with, they've got machine guns and sidearms up the yin-yang. On top of that, one of them had a big enough chunk of plastic explosive to orbit Kate Smith. The following dialogue is said over McClane's. "We have to find him and shut him up. He's telling them everything." Hans, shaking his head calmly. "The police are irrelevant. We're waiting for the FBI. Until they arrive, we can't finish our work. Meanwhile, let this fool waste time for the police. Fritz, go help Uli find the bag." The camera tightens on him. "We must find those detonators." They leave. Powell on the radio with McClane. "How many are there?" McClane thinking about it. "Figuring there's at least one to cover the lobby, a couple with the hostages. I'd say they came in with about a dozen. Down to 9, including the skydiver you already met. These guys are mostly Europeans, judging by their clothing labels. They're well-financed and very slick." "How do you know?" "I've seen enough phony IDs in my time to recognize that the ones they got cost a fortune. Add that all up, I don't know what the fuck it means, but these are badass preps and they're here to stay." We notice everything McClane has said about clothing, IDs, and police jargon has set a little buzzer off in Powell's brain. "I hear you, partner. LA's finest are on it, so light 'em if you got 'em." "I'm already ahead of you, partner." What do I call you?" A moment, then McClane smiles. What the hell?" "Roy." "Got it, Roy. Now listen. If you think of something else that we need to know, don't be shy, okay? In the meantime, I want you to find a safe place and hole up and let us do our job. You understand?" "They're all yours, Al. Good luck." McClane turns off his CB and sits against the wall. An unmarked police car pulls up across the street from the Nakatomi building, and a man in a sports coat climbs out. Stocky, his hair a little too perfect. The very fact that he's the deputy chief of police operations on a Christmas Eve gives some evidence to his position in the pecking order. His name is Dwayne T. Robinson, and he moves brusquely past police technicians. He goes to the forward group of officers. "Who's talking to them?" Powell turns around. "I am, sir. Sergeant Al Powell." "Dwayne Robinson. Well, what have you learned? What do they want?" "The terrorists?" "Don't know, sir. Haven't heard a peep from them." He's puzzled. "Then who the hell have you been talking to?" "We don't exactly know, sir. He won't give us a name. He appears to be the man who called in the report. He's killed one of the terrorists for sure, and claims he capped 2 others." Robinson exasperated. "He claims? Powell, has it occurred to you that he is one of the terrorists pulling your chain? Or some kind of nutcase who—" "I don't think so, sir. In fact, I think he's a cop. Maybe not LAPD, but definitely a badge." "How do you know?" "A hunch. Things he said, like he knows how to recognize a phony ID." Robinson exasperated. "Recognizing phony IDs? Christ, Powell, he could be a fucking bartender for all we know." Something draws Robinson's attention. He looks at a remote news truck pulling up and parking just beyond the barricades. Richard Thornburg gets out and starts supervising the positioning of cameras. "Oh, shit." Hans examines the building plans at Holly's desk. Behind him, the TV is on, the sound muted. TV cops triumph over oafish bad guys. Hans looks up as Fritz brings in Holly. "I have a request." "Oh, what idiot put you in charge?" Evenly. "You did." On his look. "You murdered my boss?" "Now," she waves toward the hostages. "They're looking to me. Personally, I would pass on the job. I don't enjoy being this close to you." Hans is impressed by her candor, and she's easy enough on the eyes. "Go on." "We have a pregnant woman out there." "Relax, she's not due for 2 weeks, but our marble floor isn't doing her back any good. I'd like permission for her to sit in one of the offices where there's a sofa." "No, but I'll have a sofa brought out to you. Is that good enough?" "Good enough. And unless you like it messy, you better start taking us in groups to the bathroom." Hans nods. "Yes, you're right. It will be done." He nods to one of his men, and she's waved to the door. "Mr. Takagi chose his people well. Mrs. Gennaro. Miss Gennaro." He nods thoughtfully. She goes out, and Hans suddenly notices a slide special bulletin has appeared. This changes to a shot of the Nakatomi building with "Live" supered over it. Richard Thornburg is in the front. The camera tightens on him. "This is Richard Thornburg speaking to you live from Century City, where Los Angeles has joined the sad but worldwide fraternity of those whose only membership requirement is the awesome specter of international terrorism." As Thornburg continues, we pull back. We are with Argyle in the back seat of the limo. Argyle reaches for the remote. "Yeah, what else is new?" The camera pulls back, and we see the Nakatomi building rising up in the background behind Thornburg. Argyle stunned. "Holy shit!" We are told that the situation began some 2 hours ago, when an unidentified party of men took over the building and sealed off all its entrances and exits. Argyle is already bailing out of the car. He looks at the metal gates and swallows. He jumps back in the car. Argyle pours himself a stiff drink. Since all the telephone lines have been cut, the only contact with the building has been through the use of CB communicators, which the terrorists brought with them. Strangely enough, so far the terrorists have not communicated directly with the police. But an unidentified man has had several conversations which seem to indicate. Argyle nearly spills his drink as he leans over the front seat and turns on the CB. Outside the building, signs of activity along the edges and shadows of the area. Men and vehicles, the snap of weapons and breaches, footsteps running in unison. Powell picks up on this and turns to Robinson, who's standing with the SWAT captain, Mitchell. "What's going on?" "What does it look like? We're going in." Powell flabbergasted. "Going in? Are you out of your mind? There's 30 hostages in there. For all we know." "All we know?" "We don't know shit, Powell. If there's hostages, why hasn't anyone asked for ransom? If there are terrorists, what's their goddamn list of demands? All we know is that someone shot up your car. Could have been the same flake you've been talking to on the radio. What about the body that fell out of the window? Who the hell knows? Maybe he was a stockbroker who looked at the Dow, opted for early retirement." "Chief, we're ready." "I'm coming." Mitchell into the radio. "Rivers." "Yo." "Begin your reconnoiter." Inside the building, McClane sadly realizes that his Marlboro pack has only 2 more to go. He savors the dregs of his current number, then suddenly becomes aware of an almost eerie quiet. He moves to the window. Hints of activity in the darkness. A light flares extinguished. Shadows move on trailer walls. McClane spooked into the CB. "Powell? Al, are you still with me? What's going on, Al?" Powell stiffens. Robinson looks at him warningly, shakes his head. I'm here, Roy, but I'm kind of busy. Let's talk later, okay?" "Al, what's wrong? Did something—" "Oh, God, you're coming in. That's it, isn't it? Christ, Powell, I told you what you're dealing with here." "I said we'll talk later, Roy." If you're what I think you are, you should know when to listen, when to shut up, and when to pray. Hating himself, Powell disconnects. He watches the lights snap on in the parking lot and illuminate the area. Also hating himself, McClane does the same thing. Pale, he moves to a window to watch what he knows is going to be brutal. Hans hunches over his communicator in Holly's office. "They'll be coming. Get ready. Tio, watch the screens. Be our eyes and ears. Wait until they are close." Eddie slips away from the desk, a computer card in his hand. He meets up with another terrorist and they move behind a slit in the wall. Eddie moves his card at the center, and a metal grid crashes into place. They hold their weapons behind it, ready. All now with earplugs in their CBs, taking up positions, the terrorists on all different floors. The SWAT team leader moves in SOP style to the door and scans it carefully. Mitchell listens to CB radio. "We are in position." Mitchell looks at Robinson, who is visibly tense. Robinson hesitates, then gives his approval with a nod. "Go." We get a few quick shots of security cameras inside the lobby. They pan and zoom. Christoph drills away at the vault door and is rewarded with the message, "Fifth lock deactivated. Do you wish to continue?" Nearby, Tio sits at a bank of monitors. Screen after screen pinpoints all the police activity outside, down to the last detail. Tio smiles. Suddenly, we recognize the tune he's been whistling. It's Singing in the Rain. Tio into the throat mic. "It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, except for the 4 assholes coming in the rear standard 2x2 cover formation." Eddie and another terrorist, Uli, take up prone firing positions, using the gaps in the steel partition like gun points. Mitchell and Robinson watch from behind the cover of a police car as the SWAT officers remove a portable welding torch and begin cutting their way through the locks. McClane moves painfully to the window and looks out. He can't see a thing because of the lights. To himself, "No!" Suddenly, rifle fire sounds from the building. Robinson, worried. "They're shooting at them." Mitchell, calm. "It's panic fire. They can't see anything." Powell, under breath. "They're shooting at the lights." More shots ring out from the building, going over the SWAT officers' heads, and suddenly the huge dome of one of the spotlights shatters behind Mitchell and Robinson's head. The glow fades. Moments later, the next light 20 feet away dies. "They're going after the lights!" The 2 SWAT officers cutting the garage suddenly look up as their cover starts to disappear. "Call them back." "No, they're almost in." Suddenly the 3rd and 4th lights are shot out, and the SWAT men are sitting ducks. Hans speaks calmly into his CB. "Don't get impatient. Just wound them." Eddie and Uli fire. They hit one of the officers in the leg and the second one in the arm. Mitchell on the radio. "Send in the car!" An armored car wheels toward the building and starts toward the wounded men. James and Alexander quickly load 2 crates onto the service elevator and push the button for the 3rd floor. As the car starts down, they remove an anti-tank gun from one of the crates. "Well, what do we have here? The police got themselves an RV. James, Alexander, southeast corner." The service elevator arrives on the 3rd floor, and James and Alexander move across the room toward the windows with the anti-tank weapon. At the window, they prepare the weapon for use. Outside the window, the armored car has stopped in front of the wounded men and paramedics, quickly loading them in from the sheltered side of the vehicle. Alexander quickly sights the armored car. "I have them." Fire. A blast roars from the 3rd floor window, and the shell hits the armored car. The car pitches forward like a beast whose front legs have been shot out from under it. Its front axle is destroyed, unable to move. Alexander looks back at James and grins. Hans watches from his window. He coldly picks up his CB. "Hit it again." McClane listening. He picks up his CB. "Hans, you motherfucker! They made their point. Let 'em pull back." "Thank you, Mr. Cowboy. I'll take it under advisement." "Hit it again." McClane slumps to the floor below the window. He feels helpless. Then, he notices his kit bag. James runs back to the crate on the elevator. Robinson and Mitchell look on in horror as the armored car sits helplessly on fire. On the police radio channel, we hear the screams of men inside. "Rivers, Rodriguez, report!" The voiceover on the radio is yelling. "This is Rivers. We got one dead. Everybody's hit. Rodriguez is bleeding bad. We gotta get the fuck out of here." Mitchell into the radio. "Rivers, hang on. That's an order. Hang on. We'll get you out." James opens the box of shells and takes 2. He starts back across the room. We are close on a football-shaped plastic explosive. It sits on the seat of a secretary's chair with casters. We pull back to see McClane press 3 detonators into the top, then cover the explosive with a typewriter, tying it securely in place with electrical cords. He wheels the chair to the service elevator and opens the door. He blocks them with a fire axe. He looks in, and the top of the car can just be seen 35 floors below. James hands the shell to Alexander, who expertly loads it into the anti-tank gun. Alexander lifts the gun to his shoulder and aims. McClane pushes the chair into the shaft. "Geronimo, motherfuckers!" For a long moment there's nothing, and then the shaft is filled with light. Then an ungodly roar, a sound. McClane is thrown back across the elevator corridor against the other back of doors by the concussion wave. The explosion on the 3rd floor, like a firestorm, rips across the floor, blowing out the machine gun next to James and Alexander, shattering windows and sending desks, chairs, phones, and typewriters flying. The police all take cover behind their cars. Powell, Robinson, and Mitchell look like they've seen the face of God as the building rocks from the blast. Henry's cigarette falls from his mouth as a desk is sent hurtling across Avenue of Stars into the trees across the street. William, watching on TV, feeling it all around him. Oh, Jesus! Dick Thornton's crew is taping. In awe. Unreal! To the cameraman. "Did you get all that?" "Yep." Thornburg looks at his competitors still setting up. "Eat your heart out, Channel 4. The hostages are shaken, and the terrorists guarding them aren't too sure of themselves either. Only Hans is relatively calm. "They're using artillery on us!" "You idiot, it's not the police." "It's him." Holly comforts Ginny. McClane sits up and lifts the CB. Al, the guy in the car. Did they make it?" Powell on the street, watching as the survivors are pulled out of the wreck to safety. "Safe and sound, thanks to you. What the fuck was that? The plastique that I found? Is the building on fire?" "No, but it's gonna need one hell of a paint job and a shitload of screen doors." He looks off and nods. "One spotters say you got 2 with that blast." "2? Are you sure?" Before Powell can answer, Robinson comes running up to him. "Is that him?" "Yes, sir." Robinson reaching for the CB. "Give me that." Angrily at McClane. "Now listen to me, mister. I don't know what you think you're doing, but demolishing a building doesn't fall under the definition of help. There's hundreds of people out here, and you covered half of them in pieces of glass." "Glass my ass. Who the fuck is this?" "This is the Deputy Chief of Police, Dwayne T. Robinson, and I'm in charge of this situation." McClane leans tiredly against the elevator door. "Well, from up here, it looks like you're in charge of shit, Dwayne. I haven't seen such a fucked up operation since the Bride of Frankenstein. Ask the guy in the armored car if they minded a little flying glass." "You listen, asshole." "Asshole? I'm not the one who just got butt-fucked on national TV, Dwayne. Now, if you're not part of the solution, stop being part of the problem. Get off the goddamn radio and put Al back on." McClane is so furious, he's out of breath. Argyle nods in agreement. "Tell him, Mr. Mack, tell him." We cut back to McClane on the 33rd floor, still seething. There's a long pause, then, "Hello, Roy. How are you feeling?" McClane, pissed. Pretty fucking unappreciated. Other officers, including Robinson, monitor the conversation. Hey, I love you. He looks around. So do a lot of the guys. So hang in there, man. Hang in there. McClane is tired but touched. Thanks, partner. We see a TV. It snaps on. We're in the studio set. We see Gale as the picture stabilizes. Of the Nakatomi building, sources say that the terrorist leader Hans may be this man, Hans Gruber. A slide of Hans appears behind her. At the same time, the camera pulls back. We realize we're on the hostage floor, and Hans has just turned on the set for his guests. He smiles modestly as they recognize him from one on-air shot and returns to the office. A member of the radical West German Volksfrei movement, strangely, the Volksfrei leadership issued a communique an hour ago stating that Gruber has been expelled from the organization and is operating on its own. Obviously, Gale, whatever his affiliation, it's safe to say that Gruber's terrorist actions in Los Angeles tonight are, well, terroristic. As the bullshit continues, Ellis suddenly stands, heads toward the terrorist office. Immediately, the chief guard here, Fritz, moves to intercept Ellis. Where are you going? I'm tired of sitting here waiting to see who gets us killed first, them or your husband. To the approaching Fritz. Hi there. Holly is worried. What are you going to do? Hey, I negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast. I can handle these clowns. I want to talk to Hans. Hans, sprechen Sie talk? He doesn't wait for an answer. Fritz follows him. Holly worries. Carl, in mid-speech, is angry. You wouldn't let me kill him when I had the chance. If you'd listened to me, he would be neutralized already. I don't want neutral, I want dead. They all turn at a rap on the door. Ellis is there. Hope I'm not interrupting. What does he want? Fritz shrugs. It's not what I want. It's what I can give you. Look, let's be straight, okay? It's obvious you're not some dumb thug up here to snatch a few purses, am I right? Carl looks at Ellis and then at Hans as if to say, let me plug this asshole right now. But Hans is either amused or curious, or bored enough to shake his head and turn back to Ellis. You're very perceptive. Politely. Ellis, flattered. Hey, I read the papers. I watch 60 Minutes. I say to myself, these guys are professionals. They're motivated. They're happening. They want something. Now, personally, I don't care about your politics. Maybe you're pissed at the camel jockeys. Maybe it's the Hebes, Northern Ireland. It's none of my business. I figure you're here to negotiate. Am I right? You are amazing. You figured this out. All of it already? Hey, business is business. You use a gun, I use a fountain pen. What's the difference? To put it in my terms, you're here on a hostile takeover, and you grab us for some green mail. But you didn't expect a poison pill was going to be running around the building. He smiles. Hans, baby, I'm your white knight. Hans dryly. I must have missed 60 Minutes. What are you saying? The guy upstairs who's fucking things up. I can give him to you. As Hans reacts with real interest for the first time, we cut to Powell by the CB. He suddenly reacts to a groan from McClane. Roy, you all right? McClane's by an open desk drawer, having just ripped open a package of Twinkies he's found. He grimaces, mouth full. Yeah, just trying to handle some year-old Twinkies. Ugh, what do they put in these things? Powell recites. Sugar, enriched flour, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, polysorbate 60, and yellow dye number 5. McClane laughing. You sound like a man with a couple of kids. Not yet. My wife's working on our first. You got any kids back on the ranch? McClane swallows a Twinkie with a grimace and takes out his wallet. He flips it open to a picture of himself, Holly, and the kids in happier days. 2. and I'd sure like to see them swinging on a jungle gym with Al Jr. It's a date. You buy the ice cream. McClane laughs and stares at the photo, when suddenly another voice beside Powell's comes over his radio. Touching, cowboy, touching. Or should I call you Mr. McClane? Mr. Officer McClane on the NYPD. McClane freezes. How much do they know? Thornburg reacts gleefully and writes down the name. To Mary. Get on the phone to our New York affiliate. Move, move! Powell reacts, signals to an aide who's already writing it too. McClane, fighting to stay calm. Sister Teresa in 3rd grade called me Mr. McClane. My friends call me John Mack. You're neither, you shithead. I have someone who wants to talk to you. A very special friend who was at the party with you tonight. McClane's face falls. Oh, God. Eyes closed, he waits for the voice that tells him it's all over. Hello, Johnny boy. McClane's eyes open, showing equal parts of shock and hope. In the office, the camera adjusts to show Ellis as Hans gives him the CB. Ellis has a cigarette, and a terrorist brings him a Diet Coke. John, they're giving me a few minutes to try and talk some sense into you. I know you think you're doing your job, but I can appreciate that, but you're just dragging this thing out. None of us gets out of here until these people can negotiate with the LA police. They're not going to start doing that until you stop messing up the works. McClane carefully. Ellis, what have you told them? Look, I told them we're old friends and you were my guest at the party. McClane sighs, partially relieved. Hans, meanwhile, narrows his eyes. Ellis, you shouldn't be doing this. Tell me about it. He looks at Hans, who gives him a nod. All right, John, listen to me. They want you to tell them where the detonators are. They know people are listening. They want the detonators, or they're going to kill me. Ellis gives Hans a big OK sign, and Hans returns it. The others listen intently. McClane closes his eyes and leans his head back. He knows what's going to happen, even if this poor bastard Ellis doesn't. John, didn't you hear me? McClane into the CB quietly. Yeah, I hear you, you fucking moron. John, I think you could get with the program a little. The police are here now. It's their problem. Tell these guys where the detonators are so no one else gets hurt. Hey, I'm putting my life on the line for you, buddy. Don't you think I know that? Put Hans on. Hans, listen to me. That shithead doesn't know what kind of scum you are, but I do. Good. Then you'll give us what we want and save your friend's life. You're not part of this equation. It's time to realize that. Saying this, Hans takes out his gun, points it at Ellis, smiling. Ellis smiles too. What am I, a method actor, Hans? Babe, put away the gun. This is radio, not television. That asshole's not my friend. I barely know him. I hate his fucking guts. Desperately sincere. Ellis, for Christ's sake, tell him you don't mean shit to me. John, how can I say that after all these years? John? Ellis looks at Hans and shrugs. Well, I tried. Hans nods understandingly. He takes the CB and presses the talk button. In one frighteningly smooth motion, he brings the Walther up to Ellis's forehead and pulls the trigger. McClane was expecting the shot, but it still chills him. Holly lowers her head sadly. Around her, the others go crazy as they see Ellis's blood splattered on the glass walls in Hans's office. He throws open the door to let McClane and the police hear the scream of the hostages. Hear that? Talk to me. Where are my detonators? Where are they? Or shall I shoot another? Sooner or later, taking a shot, I might get to someone you do care about. McClane after a beat. Go fuck yourself. He disconnects. Powell fends off Robinson, who wants the CB. God damn, didn't you hear him? He practically pulled the goddamn trigger himself. He gave that man to them. Christ, can't you read between the lines? He did everything he could to save him. If he gave himself up, they'd both be dead. Maybe. And maybe they'd at least be talking to us. Now tell your partner to stay out of it. Or so help me if he lives through this, I'll put him behind bars myself. Powell is amused. He's alone, tired, hunted, and hasn't seen diddly squat from us. You think he gives a flying fuck about what you're going to do to him? Robinson, wake up and smell the shit you're shoveling. Robinson, cold. Anytime you want to go home, Sergeant, consider yourself dismissed. They lock eyes. No, sir. You couldn't drag me away. Hans's voice over the CB. Attention, police. Attention, police. It's asses and elbows time. Tape recorders are started. Powell starts to speak. This is... Robinson takes the CB away. This is Deputy Chief Robinson. Who is this? This is Hans Gruber. I assume you realize the futility of direct action against me? We have no wish for further loss of life. What do you wish for, Mr. Gruber? I have comrades in arms around the world who are languishing in prison. The American State Department enjoys rattling its saber to its own ends. Now, it can rattle it for me. Mclean listening to this with expressions ranging from astonishment to dismay to outright derisive amusement. The following people are to be released from their captors. In Northern Ireland, the 7 members of the New Provo Front. In Canada, the 5 imprisoned leaders of Liberté de Québec. In Sri Lanka, the 9 members of the Asian Dawn Movement. Carl, Soto. Asian Dawn Movement? Off mic, Hans gives a shrug. I read about them in Time magazine. Back on the mic. When these revolutionary brothers and sisters are free, the hostages in this building will be taken to the roof, and they will accompany us in helicopters to the Los Angeles International Airport, where you will be given further instructions. You have 2 hours to comply. 2 hours? Are you insane? I can't authorize it. Hello? Hello? Do you think they will even try to do it? Who cares? On another channel. Tio, are we on schedule? Tio and Christoph have been rewarded with another lock deactivated. 1 more to go, then it's up to you. The graphics on his screen flash, warning, electromagnetic seal armed. And you better be right, because this one's going to take a miracle. It's Christmas, Theo. It's the time of miracles. So be of good cheer and call me when you hit the last lock. Disconnecting. Carl, hunt the little shit down and get those detonators. Franco is checking the explosives. Fritz is with them. I'll check the explosives. You just get those detonators. McClane on the 32nd floor. As he talks, he essentially patrols the floor he has staked out, constantly looking into every dark corner, gun held ready, moving toward the stairwell. Al! Al, are you there? I'm here, cowboy. Speaking of cows, did you ever hear so much bullshit in your life? 2 hours? That doesn't even make any sense. Don't tell me, partner. I'm just a desk jockey who was on the way home when you rang. The way you drove that car, I figured you for the streets. In my youth, partner. In my youth. On the TV studio at night, Gail and Harvey have company. A man from the Senator, Paul Simon's School of Grooming. Mid-speech. Author of, and she holds up a copy, Hostage, Terrorist, Terrorist, Hostage. A Study in Duality. Dr. Hasseldorf, what can we expect in the next few hours? Well, Gail, by this time, the hostages and their captors will be entering the early stages of the Helsinki Syndrome. As in Helsinki, Sweden? Sam sighs and shakes his head in the control room. Hasseldorf over the monitor. Finland. Basically, it's when the hostages and terrorists go through a sort of psychological transference and projection of dependency. Fritz drags Ellis's body out of the office and throws it on the floor, over Hans's TV. What can only be described as a strange sort of trust and bond develops. We've had situations where hostages have embraced their captors after their release, and in one case even corresponded with them in prison. Hans turns and looks up at the ceiling. Too dim up there to see from here. He sighs and sets his gun down on a buttress. He starts to climb up, not enjoying it. Robinson looks out at a young cop and reacts, startled. The FBI? Here? Now? Yes, sir. Right over there. Robinson looks at Powell, adjusts his clothing, and fixes his tie. Dryly. You want a breath mint? Robinson glares at him. Then they move together toward a big dark government car. Headlights still on, dominating the area where it sits. Robinson steps up and sees FBI agents. They all get out. One big lit silhouette, and one little one. Big Johnson showing his badge. I'm Special Agent Johnson of the FBI. This is Agent Johnson. No relation. Robinson stepping forward, plastic smile. Dwayne Robinson, LAPD, I'm in charge here. Not anymore. Robinson reacts, and we go to the mechanical floor, tight on Hans. He checks the plastique, but is not pleased. He turns and drops to the floor. He lands, knees bent, and looks directly at a pair of bare feet. A gun barrel drops into the shot close to his head. Lost? A moment. Then Hans turns and looks up. The transformation in his expression and bearing are mind-boggling. Hands shaking, eyes filled with fear, he swallows and looks up at McClane. In a perfect American accent, he says, "Oh God, please don't kill me, don't kill me. You're one of them. I know it." McClane is thrown and unsure. Whoa. Easy, man, I won't hurt you. Who are you? What are you looking for? Hans's eyes dart toward the buttress, where a tiny piece of his gun sticks out barely visible. Away up to the roof. I thought I could signal for help. He starts in that direction. Forget it, they got a guy up there. You want to stay alive, keep moving. Hey, you hear me? Hans realizes this tack won't work. He follows McClane. You're an American? McClane friendly, easing the man's fears. Only if New Jersey counts. It works. The poor frightened civilian shows a hint of a smile. Robinson in mid-speech to the FBI. We've got 30, maybe 35 hostages, probably on the 30th floor. 7, maybe 8 terrorists. Little Johnson to Big Johnson. Sounds like a standard A7 scenario. Big Johnson nods in agreement and turns to Robinson. Thank you, we'll handle it from here. When we need to commandeer your men, we'll try and let you know. He starts to move away with his partner. Powell, angry. Aren't you forgetting something? Johnson and Johnson turn. Robinson wants Powell to shut up. Such as? Powell points to the building. John McClane. He's the man who gave us all the information we've got. He's the reason we're facing 7 terrorists instead of 12. He's inside? Who is he? Robinson nods. He may be a cop. We're checking on that. One of yours? No, sir. After a moment. If he's not a terrorist, and he's not a hostage, he's just not part of the equation. They start to walk away. Powell is indignant. That's the same goddamn thing the terrorists said. Little Johnson is interested. Really? Well, that's one good thing. Sounds like we're dealing with pros. They leave. McClane and Hans walk together. Hans is still a nervous wreck. Hans nods. There was a party, celebration. All of a sudden they were shooting and threatening us. McClane looks at his poor civilian, on the edge of going to pieces. He puts his hand on his shoulder. Relax, man. You smoke? Hans nods, still frightened. McClane takes out his spoils of war, the Marlboros. 2 left. He sighs and takes one. He offers the other one with an expression like a little boy forced to share a cookie. McClane takes out a lighter, does his and Hans's. Hans nods, grateful, then peers at McClane. You don't work for Nakatomi, and if you're not one of them... I'm a cop from New York. New York? McClane explains. They invited me to the Christmas party. Who knew? Hans's eyes take in his bare feet. Better than being caught with your pants down, right? He extends his hand. John McClane. Hans, shaking his hand. William Clay. Call me Bill. McClane nods, friendly-like. His eyes glance casually over at the wall, a roster of Nakatomi employees. In alphabetical order, the camera moves over the C's. Campbell, Clay, Crawford. Pans back to Clay. Hey Bill, you know how to use a handgun? Hesitant. One week I went to the combat ranch. Apologetic. You know that game, the guns that shoot at red paint? Must sound pretty silly to you. Sounds better than nothing. McClane takes out his Beretta, pops out the magazine, jams in a fresh one, and hands it to him. Time for the real thing. McClane turns and moves on. We stay on him until he reacts to a click. He slowly turns. Hans is, well, Hans again, from expression to posture. He holds the pistol aimed at McClane's face and talks calmly into his radio in German. Carl, Franco, I'm on 33. Come quickly. To McClane. Put down your gun and give me my detonators. McClane just looks at him. Hans. You're Hans? Hans nods, indicating McClane's gun again. Put it down. That was tricky with the accent. I bet you'd do a great Ed Sullivan. Why do you need the detonators, Hans? I already used the explosives. I'm counting to 3. McClane, cold. Yeah, like you did with Tagagi. McClane raises his machine gun and aims it at Hans. Hans pulls the trigger. A click. Astonishment. More clicks. McClane steps in carefully and reclaims his pistol. You think I'm a schmuck, Hans? Hans pales as we hear the ding of an approaching elevator. You were saying? McClane whirls in time to see Carl, Franco, and Fritz coming out of the elevator, firing. McClane fires back, killing Fritz. Carl and Franco take cover. McClane ducks into a water cooler alcove and looks back. Where Hans was, he's now gone. McClane curses himself and then retreats into a bank of computers where he ducks and dodges as bullets ping and ricochet all around him. Ducking and rolling, he fires at Franco. McClane's bullets rake his middle and throw him over a desk, his weapon flying. He slides right into a glass door. It smashes around his head. Bright arterial blood fountains up. Hope rises at the prospect of an equal battle. His face suddenly falls as bullets fly from an unexpected direction. Hans has reappeared and snatched up Franco's weapon. McClane fires, moving, trying to keep from being flanked. One of his shots shatters a glass panel, raining down shards near Hans, who escapes with only superficial scratches. Hans looks at the glass around him and gets an idea. He shouts to Carl in German. The glass! Shoot the glass! Saying this, he demonstrates, and Carl follows suit. As glass flies everywhere, McClane sees only one option and takes it. Blasting a burst to keep their heads down, he whirls, jumps on top of a long counter, and runs across the room. Their bullets follow him 6 inches behind his moving form. Big gray units groan with electronic squeals and sparks as million gigabytes go to ram heaven. McClane reaches the end of the counter, dives and rolls to the floor. His foot goes right down on a jagged shard. He groans but keeps going. He's out, gone, and safe. Carl looks pissed as hell. Behind him, Hans sifts through the rubble, then comes over smiling. He's holding the bag of detonators. Smile, Carl. We are back in business. Hasseldorf on the monitor. It all depends what we mean by terror. If Clausewitz would say, war is the last resort of diplomacy, couldn't we just as well say that terrorism has an equal claim to... Mary comes inside, grinning ear to ear. Thornburg looks up from his Danish, a cute little chin napkin protecting his shirt collar. You got something? Mary waving a paper. Just McClane's name, badge number, police record, vital statistics. And his family's address right here in LA. As Thornburg grins, we go to the hostage floor. Eddie and Uli are guarding the hostages. Hans and Carl return. Hans tosses the bag of detonators to Uli, who grins and leaves. Holly has watched all this nervously, but Ginny's eyes follow Carl, who doesn't share the mood of the others. That one looks pissed. Miss Gennaro? Holly, relieved. Thank God. Explaining. He's still alive. The door jars open to the upstairs washroom. McClane all but crawls inside. As he passes the camera, we see his dragging foot leaving a trail of blood on the linoleum. Tio and Christoph react in the vault room delighted as they get the message 6th lock deactivated. Suddenly a buzzer sounds and a graphic flashes. Electromagnetic seal engaged. Cannot be disarmed at this location. Terminate sequence. YN. You better heat up that miracle we were talking about. We broke through number 6, and the electromagnetic came down like a sledgehammer. Hans is unfazed. We'll have a look at what our friends outside are doing, and I'll be right up. Wincing in pain, McClane washes his foot in a sink basin. He washes a deep cut and soaps it, but the pain doesn't relent. When a voice speaks, he jumps and realizes it's the CB. Roy, you still with us? Yeah, but all things being equal, I'd rather be in Philadelphia. By the way, chalk up 2 more terrorists. The boys will be glad. We got a pool going on you. McClane tries to wrap paper towels on the foot, but his grimace shows that it still hurts like hell. Through his teeth. Yeah, what's the odds? You don't want to know. Suddenly remembering the NYPD course in first aid from 10 years ago, McClane removes the improvised bandage to check the cut more carefully. As he works, put me down for 20 anyway. I'm good for it. So, what got you off the street, Al? You like lousy coffee or what? Powell doesn't answer right away. At the same time, McClane swallows, seeing a gleam inside his foot. He gingerly probes and pulls out a shard of glass 3 inches long. From its angled gash, his mouth twisted in a silent scream all the way. I realized I couldn't do what I had to anymore. At least not out there. I had an accident. McClane throws the glass across the room, forehead bathed in sweat. Weakly. The way you drive, I could see why. Powell, a beat, serious. I shot a kid. Realizing what he's hearing for the first time, McClane's face shifts to a new kind of pain. 11 years ago. It was dark. He was big for his age. Damn ray gun. It looked real enough. Yeah, I had all the right excuses. But afterwards, I really couldn't draw my gun again. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make a joke of it. Hey, you couldn't know. I still feel like shit. Then this won't matter. Reluctantly. LAPD is not calling the shots anymore. As McClane reacts, we go to the vault room. Hans and Tio lean over a monitor, watching a DWP truck near the parking garage. Tio tapping the screen. There's the city engineers. They're going into the street circuits. But who are these guys in the suits? That's the FBI, ordering them to cut the building's power. They're as regular as clockwork. Or a time lock. On Tio's look. The circuits that cannot be cut are cut automatically in response to a terrorist incident. You ask for miracles. Tio, I give you the FBI. When you're hot, you're hot. As we saw on Tio's screen, the Johnsons and Robinson and Powell are by a manhole with the city engineer. A big control box is there, cables snaking into the ground, where another city worker finishes welding a last connection. We're splicing in down the line. Do it now. The engineer throws giant levers, and inside the manhole, sparks sizzle, and massive contacts clunk. One by one, all the lights on all the floors go out. McClane in the bathroom ripping off his shirt and tying it around his foot. He reacts. Powell, what's going on? Powell watching the others. Ask the FBI. They've got the terrorist playbook and they're running it, step by step. McClane reacts, worried. He knows better. The hostages groan with this new problem. Tio and Christoph and Hans huddle over the computer monitor screen as if it was a warm fireplace. Tio points to the computer screen. All they can do is wait. We hear the hum of a portable generator. The lights go off. The computer screen stays on. Tio looks over at the safe. It still reads, "Fiber optic time lock cannot be disarmed at this location. Terminate sequence." Damn, it didn't go off. They are on the building's circuit. It's too local. Encourage them to be bolder. The only thing left for them to do is the city grid. Worried and typing. They may not do it. Just as the Johnsons are looking smug, all the floors go back on one by one. Shit! Turning to the engineer. Cut it again, and go wider. I can't go wider here. To Robinson, looking for help. I'd have to call downtown. Have them take down one of the city grids. You're talking 10 square blocks. 10 blocks? To Big Johnson. It's Christmas Eve, thousands of people. The mayor will scream bloody murder. Big Johnson ignoring Robinson. You must shut down the building. Go wider. I need authorization. Authorization? How about the United States fucking government? Lose the grid or lose your job. The engineer looks at Robinson. No help. The engineer looks at his guy in the manhole and shrugs. No choice. The engineer takes the phone. Central, this is Walt out at Nakatomi. I want you to shut down grid 212. No shit, it's my ass. Just shut it down now. Pause. Then the buildings of the floor all go out again. Emergency lighting flicks on. An alarm. Beep, beep, beep. The LED readout on the safe changes to fiber optic time lock deactivated at source. 7th lock disengaged. With a dramatic hum worthy of 2001, the vault door opens. The FBI guys look at the dark building, then at the LAPD guys. That should shake 'em up. With all the power shut down, those bastards are probably scared shitless. The safe door finishes its pondering move and clunks to a halt. Tio and Christoph laugh and give each other high fives. Even Hans loses his usual cool. He slaps Tio on the back as Tio and Christoph cheer. Thornburg's TV truck drives along a residential street. We see the Nakatomi Tower in the background, spotlit by the police beams. Thornburg checks a map and points a turnout to the driver. Powell looks up at the dark Nakatomi building structure, lit only by emergency lighting. He sidles over to the FBI men. Powell dryly. What do we do now? Arrest them for not paying the electrical bill? Little Johnson sharply. We let them sweat a while. Then, when they're expecting helicopters, we give them helicopters. Big Johnson. Right in the ass. Into another communicator. This is Johnson? No, the other one. I want air support ready to lift off in 5 minutes. Yeah, damn right, fully armed. We're on our way. Into his CB. Attention in the building. Hans talks while Tio and Christoph tackle the problem of unloading the racks and racks of bonds and transferring them into the black cases. This is Hans. This is Agent Johnson of the FBI. The State Department has arranged for the release of your comrades. The helicopters you requested are on the way. I hear you, FBI. We'll be ready. He disconnects and smiles at Tio. When they touch down and we blow the roof, they'll spend a month sifting through the bodies and the rubble. By the time they figure out what went wrong, smiling at the irony, we'll be earning 20%, like nice fat capitalists. Big Johnson disconnecting and grinning. By the time he figures out what hit him, he'll be in a body bag. The Johnsons exit. Powell and Robinson look at each other, unhappy. Powell's CB hisses. Powell, listen. Powell moves off to be alone. I'm here, John. McClane tries walking on his foot. He winces in pain, clearly at the end of his resources. After a long pause. Look, I'm getting a bad feeling up here. I'd like you to do something for me. Look up my wife. Don't ask how, you'll know by then. And tell her I've been a jerk. When things panned out for her, I should have been behind her all the way. We had something great going until I screwed it up. She was the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me. She's heard me say I love you 1,000 times, but she never got to hear this. Honey, I'm sorry. You get all that? Powell is clearly touched. I got it, but you can tell her yourself. Just watch your ass and you'll make it. I hope so, but that's up to the guy upstairs. Pause, and struck by a thought. Upstairs, thinking to himself. Hans, you bastard, what were you doing? Roy? Stand by, Powell. I gotta check out something. He moves toward the door, limping hurriedly out of the room. Thornburg has got one foot literally in the doorway of Holly's front door, but since Paulina still has the chain on, it's not quite enough. To Paulina, 1 minute, that's all we ask. You could be denying them their last chance to talk to their parents. I'm sorry. Miss Holly says I couldn't let strangers into... Strangers? I'm with KFLW TV. That's affiliated with the FCC. I'm sure you know that's the United States government. Just like the INS. As she wavers, McClane hobbles into the mechanical room, favoring his foot. He retraces his steps earlier, mentally replaying his meeting with Hans. I was here, and he was... His eyes flick over the area. Then he looks up. Seeing something, he moves closer. He sets down his CB, and then, with difficulty, he climbs up on a thick pipe, flicks his lighter, and holds it high. Explosives are everywhere. He reacts, quickly extinguishing the lighter. He follows the detonator lines with his eyes. Oh my God! He drops to the floor, wincing in pain, and picks up his CB. Powell, listen to me. You're being double-crossed. The whole roof of this building is... Suddenly, a gun barrel is pressed against his head, and he stiffens. Carl takes his Beretta and tosses it away. Then Carl takes the CB. Smiling, Carl smashes the transmitter underfoot. Powell is beside one of the radio monitoring officers. Powell into the CB. Roy? Hello? Hello? To the officer. I thought you had him. I did. He said something about a double cross. Tell me about it. Showing 2 helicopters in the distance heading this way. Carl hovers over McClane, who hasn't moved a muscle. Carl, quietly. We're both professionals, but this is personal. You are done. McClane drives his elbow into Carl's face. Carl's weapon clatters on the floor. McClane follows his first blow with another. Carl recovers with a spinning karate kick and slams McClane back. Eddie turns from a window on the hostage floor, where the chopper lights loom closer. They're coming. The camera pans across the room to the doorway of the office, where Hans nods and stands. I know you're proud of your daddy. A close-up of Holly, speechless, watching in shock. A portable TV shows Thornburg at Holly's house. He's squatting down with his microphone to interview the children in their PJs. His voice is soft and comforting. Thornburg to the children. Because he's a very brave policeman, and your mom has shown just as much courage. But is there something you would like to say to them if they're watching? John Jr. says nothing, but Lucy looks at the camera. Come home. Holly struggles to stay composed, but can't. She slowly turns her head and looks at Hans. Hans is looking away from us, at the picture of the children on her desk. He turns back and looks at her. He smiles. Mrs. McClane, how nice to make your acquaintance. He raises his weapon, but he shoots it into the ceiling, making everyone jump. On your feet, everyone! Upstairs, now! Quietly to Uli. You'll lock them up there and come right down. Uli nods, and he and Eddie help herd everyone toward the stairs. Hans moves forward and grabs Holly himself. McClane and Carl move towards each other, each sizing the other up, each looking over the terrain. Better this way, isn't it? I mean, any faggot can shoot a gun. This time, Carl doesn't take the bait. Then, when he does charge, it's unexpected. The two men fight brutally, Carl bringing years of martial art training to this moment. McClane brings nothing but the street. You should have heard your brother scream when I broke his fucking neck. Carl steps in quickly with a deadly move. McClane twists free and slams an elbow into Carl's kidney. Carl backs off and circles McClane with new respect. Through the canopy, we see another flanking chopper. Johnson and Johnson are here, helmets and mics on. Big Johnson checks aerial maps, while Little Johnson checks ammo clips for his sniper-scoped assault rifle. Shouting to the pilot, Stay low! They're expecting transports, not gunships. Little Johnson shouting over the noise of the rotors. What do you figure on breakage? I figure we take out all the terrorists and lose 20% of the hostages. 25 tops. I can live with those numbers. Tio and Christoph load the bonds into the big cases, which carried all their gear when they entered. As Hans and Eddie come in, they look curiously at Holly. A little bonus for us. Shoving her forward violently. A policeman's wife might come in handy. He picks up a CB and speaks into it. McClane! McClane, I have some news for you, McClane. We tilt up from the CB radio Carl smashed. Carl and McClane are in the background, almost toe-to-toe. All their tricks are played out, going at it with animal instinct. McClane! He pauses, and then on a new channel. Carl! Nothing. He looks at Tio. Hurry! Uli herds the hostages up onto the roof, pushing the last few out. The FBI choppers float towards us, hugging the street. Their prop wash, shaking the trees. Powell and Robinson following them with their eyes, for once sharing the same opinion. The hostages see their very own Christmas decorations, the friendly copter lights, and begin to smile and cheer. Uli smiles to himself and moves toward the door. Tio closes the lid of the bond-stuffed case in the vault room and carries it out of the room. Holly's eyes follow his exit while the others continue. Holly to Hans scornfully. After all your posturing and all your speeches, you're nothing but a common thief. I'm an exceptional thief, Mrs. McClane. Now I'm moving up to kidnapping. You should be more polite. He slaps her. Carl drives McClane back with a sweeping head kick, and another. McClane is staggering. He gets in one hard punch and then Carl charges at him. McClane falls backwards, drives his legs upwards, propelling Carl into the air. Carl goes into a loop of chain hanging over a turbine and becomes entangled. McClane jumps to his feet and yanks the other end of the chain. Carl is jerked upwards by the neck. He twitches like a captured fish and starts to turn blue. McClane twists the chain end around a pipe as Carl stills. McClane snatches up his Beretta from the floor and runs out. We can see the tailing chopper through the open port of this one. Big Johnson leans over and slaps the shoulder of his pilot. Just like Saigon, eh, Wally? My kind of town. The door rattles. His back to the camera, Uli goes to the door and opens it. 2 bullets come out his back. Smoking Beretta in hand, McClane vaults over the body before it has even stopped twitching. As the hostages squeal and scream, McClane snatches up Uli's machine gun and runs out onto the roof. He charges through the crowd and spots Ginny near the edge of the roof. She meets him halfway. Where's Holly? They took her after they saw the kids on television. What? God. He looks off to the choppers, closer yet. He turns and shouts, Listen to me, all of you. Get down to the lower floors. You're all in danger. What are you, crazy? We're being rescued. These helicopters. There won't be shit for these helicopters to land on. The whole top of this building is wired with explosives. Now get below. But we're safe up here. Safe my ass. This ain't a helipad. It's a launching pad. He fires over their heads and they scream. They head for the door as he hoped. He fires again, raking a line across the roof. Now they really haul ass. Get below! Now! A young FBI agent is on the wing chopper midair with a rifle and a partner. Into the throat mic, looking out the door. Flight leader, this is Wing. I think they're on to us. One of the terrorists is firing on the hostages. Inside the other chopper, Little Johnson. Roger, Wing, we copy. Swing around, to the pilot, and he raises his rifle. Give me a clear shot. The pilot nods. Hans supervising the work. Schnell! Der Sitz ist kurz! Something catches his eye and he turns. Through the window, the glass here, he can catch a glimpse of the hostages coming back into the room. McClane herds the last of the hostages inside and starts for the door himself, when with a roar and a chatter of rotors, the lead chopper zooms overhead. McClane throws himself down on the ground and looks up as the chopper banks in a tight turn. Then from the open side, gunfire erupts. Shocked, McClane dives out of the way and the bullets that stitched across the door. Descending and screaming, hostages howling, the chopper sweeps past a window on the loop back toward the roof. Both Johnsons fire away. Bank and we'll nail him! Hans whirls toward Christoph. Blow the roof, now! But Carl and Uli are up there. The camera adjusts to show the remote detonator on a table. Hans goes to it. McClane dives away from another burst. You assholes, I'm on your side! They come in for another pass. Desperately, he looks around and sees a fire hose. He makes up his mind with the chopper looming up behind him. He slings Uli's weapon and runs to the fire hose, unreels 3 yards, loops it around his back and under his legs. He looks over the edge and hesitates. Fuck this. Bullets hit all around him and he jumps. Hans extends the antenna and hits the button. The helipad explodes. A fireball rolls into the sky. The hostages lose their footing on the floor. Dust and debris fall down, but they're okay. The Johnson's chopper strains to avoid the rising fireball, but can't. It's caught in the explosion. It tips over and a rotor hits the roof. It crashes, explodes, and tumbles down the side of the building. McClane dangling against the side of the building, he ducks and winces as flaming debris soars past him. Flames roar toward the hose wheel device on the roof and engulf it. It jerks on its foundation and pivots 180 degrees as several bolts slip. McClane drops several more feet. He swallows and then kicks against the side of the building, his bloody feet leaving smears. The shatterproof glass doesn't budge. Wincing as more flaming debris sizzles by, McClane levels the machine gun and kicks off from the building, swings back 10 feet. Reaching the zenith of his arc, he fires the gun and sails back in. McClane smashes through the shattered glass and sails inside, rolling onto the floor. plowing through furniture and decor. Finally, he stops and catches his breath with relief. He rises to one knee. The fire hose mounting is blasted off the roof and sails past the camera. The hose mechanism tumbles downward. McClane is yanked off his feet, dragged toward the window. It slides down the side of the building, and the hose plays out on the edge of the windowsill, dragging McClane toward his death. He claws at the floor, but it's no help. Inches from the shattered window, he braces his legs against the sill and groans as he fights the weight of the hose and the reel. One foot slips. Only his already wounded foot keeps him indoors. He scrambles to untie his improvised rappelling rig and gets free just before the hose nozzle crashes out and into the great beyond. Winded, strength ebbing, he staggers to his feet just in time for the roof to recoil from another staggering explosion. The hostages scream and cry out. As Holly covers her head from falling plaster, the men work like automatons, piling up the bonds. McClane recovers from another aftershock and runs up the steps. He's momentarily amazed to hear a ding from the elevator, and he looks at the shaft, where suddenly the wall explodes outward as an entire elevator crashes through the wall, swinging on its cable like a demolition ball on a crane. McClane runs up the steps as brickwork flies past his head like shrapnel. The elevator reaches the apex of its swing and drops down in an arcing turn. The elevator crashes into the stairs. The section McClane is on snaps loose. At the last minute, McClane leaps toward the vault floor balcony and catches it as stairs and elevator crumble behind and beneath him. With his last effort, he hauls himself onto the balcony and then moves off. The police are scrambling for cover outside. Powell and Robinson are open-mouthed. Argyle, in the basement, is huddled down on the floor of the back seat, the stuffed animal held over his head, as much for company as protection. As the building ceases to rock, Argyle sneaks a peek from under the fur and sees Tio at the delivery truck. He steps into a white paramedic's jumpsuit and zips it up. He hops into the cab and pulls the truck away from the loading dock. On the vault floor, McClane creeps forward and looks carefully into the vault room. They're getting ready to leave with the bearer bonds. Suddenly, the camera focus changes to Holly. McClane's face shows his anguish. He checks the weapons he took from Uli. 1 bullet. McClane under his breath. Shit. He checks his Beretta. 1 bullet. He thinks, desperate, and decides. He takes the bullet from the rifle clip and adds it to the Beretta clip. He slams the pistol clip back, really worried. Mind racing, he looks all around the room. His eyes fall on a tape dispenser. He thinks again and steps toward it. In the basement, Tio has pulled 2 ramps out from the truck and slips them into the back. A car engine fires up inside the delivery truck. Argyle, realization dawning, vaults into the front seat. A paramedic van shoots out of the back of the Pacific Courier delivery truck. Flooring the limo, Argyle crashes into the van, which careens into the wall. Tio staggers out in time for Argyle to deck him with 1 punch. Looking around. Where's the camera when you need him? Hans in the vault room. Let's move. The last of the money is piled on. Hans hangs on to Holly while Eddie pushes the mail carts of money bags. Christoph goes to the door to scope their escape. Suddenly, he's cold-cocked by a rifle butt. McClane steps into view in the doorway, backlit by sparks still tumbling down from the roof above. He holds the machine gun ready. Hans! Hans turns, not that surprised. Grinning, he yanks Holly into view. No words can be said. John! Holly, we have to stop meeting like this. Taking in the vault. So that's what it was. A fucking robbery. So why nuke the building, Hans? With a shrug. When you steal $600, you can disappear. When you steal 600 million, they will find you. Unless you play dead. A tight smile. which happens to be your next role. Drop your gun, please. McClane hesitates. Hans pushes the gun against Holly again, really hurting her. Eddie quickly raises his weapon. Hans to Eddie. Nein! Dies ein ist mein, to McClane. This time, John Wayne does not walk off into the sunset with Grace Kelly. That was Gary Cooper, shithead. No more jokes. Drop it, or she gets it between the eyes. McClane slowly putting down his gun. Whoa, Hans, now you're the cowboy. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Now you are fucked. He aims. Holly, now! Holly sidesteps and jabs her elbow into Hans's face. At the same time Holly moves, McClane grabs his Beretta from its hiding place, taped to the back of his neck, and shoots Hans high in the chest. The bullet passes right through Hans, and the window behind him splatters with blood and shatters. Even while this is happening, McClane spins. Eddie takes a gunshot through McClane's widespread legs and drops, just like on Gunsmoke. Hans drops his weapon, staggers and looks down at his own blood in shock. You were right about us Americans. He blows smoke from his pistol barrel. We are cowboys. Incredibly, Hans stands still, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. He reels and falls against the windowsill. He starts to topple. He then grits his teeth, from some inward place finds a last reserve of strength, and he grabs Holly's wrist. She's yanked off her feet. Hans goes out the window, pulling Holly with him. McClane leaps forward and catches her inside arm near the elbow at the last minute. The roof still in flames, McClane hangs halfway out of the window, jagged glass raking his face, straining to hold on to Holly, as Hans drags her out. McClane braces himself against the window frame and strains to pull Holly closer. With a moan, she catches the inside of the windowsill with her hand. McClane stretches with his other hand and begins to inch toward Holly's wristband. Hans's hand has a death grip on the watchband. We widen and see that blood-flecked teeth are gritting. He's straining with his other hand to bring up the gun that he's still holding. Holly's scream alerts him. Hans locks eyes with McClane one last time and starts to pull the trigger. McClane releases the latch on the watchband, and the overtaxed metal snaps, links flying. Hans's face registers his horror as he and most of the watch suddenly drop. We listen to his scream all the way down and finally hear him hit. McClane pulls Holly back into the room and holds her. It's okay, babe. It's okay. He looks at Hans's body, then back at the scrap of wristband he's still holding. You got a warranty on this? She laughs through her tears and holds on to him. We dissolve to smoke drifting up from what has suddenly become the top floor. Thornburg's remote truck careens into the parking lot. A crowd watches as the front doors of the building open. We see McClane, who holds up Holly, and in turn is supported by SWAT men. As reporters start shooting questions, McClane breaks free of his entourage, holding Holly, and pushes into the crowd. Al, are you here? The crowd eddies and surges. Suddenly Powell is there, and McClane knows it's him. They stare at each other, 10 feet apart, and then they're grinning, extending their hands. Somehow, a shake isn't enough, and they're embracing each other, like men who've lived through combat together, which in fact is the truth. McClane emotional. Al, man, you are my rock. I couldn't have made it without you. Bullshit. I'm serious. Hey, this is my wife, Holly Gennaro. Holly taking Powell's hand, correcting. Holly McClane. Hearing this, McClane grins and pulls her close. A pleasure. I guess John doesn't need me to give you that message anymore. Message? She's puzzled. McClane begins to make a silent ixnay gesture in Powell's direction. You know about him being such a jerk and how he's really sorry. He sees McClane. I'm sure he'll fill you in. Just then Robinson barges forward. I want you for debrief, McClane. You've got some things to answer for. Ellis's murder, property damage, interfering with police business. A scream causes McClane to turn. There in the doorway is Carl, clothing and body scorched. Easily as crusted in dirt and blood as McClane, he holds his machine gun. As the crowd panics trying to escape, Carl locks eyes with McClane and levels his gun. McClane throws Holly to the ground and grabs the dumbstruck Robinson's sidearm. He doesn't get off a shot. A lone gunshot stops Carl, knocking him back through the doorway. McClane looks back to see Powell, still sighting down the barrel of his .38. His hand is rock steady. He sees McClane's look. Powell shrugs. You were right. You couldn't have made it without me. They smile. Suddenly McClane and Holly squint as lights pan onto them. Thornburg pushes his way forward, mic extended like a weapon. Mr. McClane, Mrs. McClane, any comment on your incredible ordeal? What are your feelings now that it's over? Without a beat, Holly punches him in the chops. He falls, dropping the mic with an electronic squeal. McClane looks at his wife, amazed. Behind them, Thornburg sits on the ground, nurses his lip, and turns to his cameraman. Did you get that? McClane and Holly continue on and turn toward Argyle's limo. It's a little smashed up, but it's still running. Argyle is standing beside the open door. Holly and McClane get in, and Argyle closes the door. Argyle gets in the front. If this is their idea of Christmas, I gotta be there for New Year's. The camera adjusts to show the rear window where McClane and Holly are kissing. As they drive off, we fade out. The end.